Okay, so let's start by offering a flower at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. So let's close our eyes. Deep meditation. We are offering a flower, expressing our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada. By his mercy, we are actually practicing Krishna consciousness and we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's offer our prayers. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsya. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sarva Shastravri Piyusha, Sarva Vaidika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sarva Lokaika Drikpada, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidvanto Ditaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, Paramananda Pathaya, Prema Varsha Aksharaya, Te Sarvada Sarva Sevaya, Shri Krishnaya Namostute, Mad Eka Bandhu, Mad Sangin, Mad Guru, Mad Mahadana, Mad Nishtaraka, Mad Bhagya, Mad Ananda Namostute, Asadu Sadhu Tadain, Atini Chocha Takara, Hana Muncha Kadachid Mam, Prema Rit Kanthayo Spuraha, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayan Namaskrityam Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Srimatam Sata Swakatha Krishna Punya Shamana Kirtanam Hridyanta Sabhadrani Vidunoti Surisatam Nashta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for joining. So let's do a quick round of revision of our chapter 12, and we are going to complete chapter 12, move on to chapter 13. So any points anyone would like to share quickly from chapter 12 that stood out to you? That was like a highlight of your reading for last week. Let's go quick.
I was going through the qualities of Parikshit Maharaj. It felt like I'm reading chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita about opulences of the Lord. The Lord says, I'm, from these, I'm best of these. So it was quite similar.
Yes, very nice comparison. Thank you for that. Thank you. Next.
How Yudhishthira Maharaj had so much opulence, but he was not satisfied. Just like a hungry person can't be satisfied with a lot of things, but only when food can really satisfy one.
Right. We'll read further about that in chapter 13 also. Thank you. Next. Yes, next who would like to go? Yes, Rup.
So in the chapter 12, like the 28th verse, the purport was it's related to the fearlessness And Prabhupada says that liberation or mukti means getting relief from the constant anxieties, and this possible only with the devotional service of the Lord. So yeah, it's the point. Like so one practical point.
Thank you, We'll discuss that a little bit. We'll start with 26, so we'll discuss that. Thank you. Okay, next.
Prabhuji, last time you mentioned, it was very nice point that we are all the conditioned souls, and deity worship is recommended for purify our senses and our consciousness, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Very much. Thank you. So that question was posted on the group also. So we'll quickly revise those questions also. I'll continue with 26 onwards. We'll complete the chapter and then see. I think all the answers are very nicely given for all the questions, and it was very nice. So many questions, and the group was so active and so eager to see all the questions. So thank you all for posting the questions and the detailed answers. Very nice. Thank you. Okay, next.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, ma'am.
Lord protects all the living beings through his various agencies or potencies, but for pure devotees, he comes personally to protect them.
Yes. Thank you. First, he came personally in the womb to protect Maharaj Parikshit. Thank you. Okay. Next.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I really like this point that in text 17 that the family in which a Mahabhagavata takes his birth is fortunate because due to the birth of a first grade devotee, the members of the family, past, present, and future, up to 100 generations become liberated by the grace of the Lord.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Who's next?
Yes,
ma'am.
I'm really thankful to you for you explain the Adi Rasa topic. How material, like how spiritual sense gratification is to bring Radha and Krishna together. That has helped me in chanting a lot. Like when I'm chanting, I want them to be there. So it has helped me a lot. So thank you for explaining. This is the best part of Bhakti Vaibhav is that we do some little, in-depth study of the verses. It might be similar, the same verses we have read before also, but complete different understanding of those verses.
Thank you, Mataji. That's a very, very nice point. And if you are interested to study more, there's a seminar given by Mother Urmila called, it's called Sex Desire. And then she explains that how that original Adi Rasa is what we are all looking for. It's a very beautiful seminar. It's a 3-part seminar. I would highly recommend that. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I like the point that the whole world is actually hungry for the spiritual atmosphere. That's why the people are not happy because they are not cultivating their spiritual upliftment.
And we have the right food for the whole world by distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. Okay, anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, the real hunger is for Krishna, and no other hunger will satisfy us.
Yes. The only lack in this entire world is lack of Krishna consciousness. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue. So we have stopped with text number 26. So we are reading how the Brahmanas, Maharaj Yudhishthira actually asked the Brahmanas that please tell me more about Maharaj Parikshit, and then the Brahmanas are actually speaking, and they have told different qualities of Maharaj Parikshit. And then starting from text 19, we read that how it said that how when in maintaining all those who are born, he'll just be like Ishwaku. And then in keeping the promise, and how Lord Ramchandra kept his promise, like, okay, 14 years of Vanvas, I will take it. So he kept his promise. So just like that, he'll be as glorious as Lord Ramchandra to keep his promise. Then we talked about in text 20 about King Shibi, that he'll be a magnificent donor of charity, just like King Shibi. And the entire story of the pigeon and the eagle, and how King Shibi gave his own body as a mask to actually protect that pigeon, right? and then Bharat, and in that he'll spread the name and fame of his family, just like Bharat. And in that purport we read there are three Bharatas, right? There are many Bharatas. So Prabhupada talks of three, and here it is particularly referring to Bharat as the son of Dushyanta, right? And then amongst great bowmen, he'll be like Arjun. He'll be irresistible like the fire. He'll be unsurpassable like the ocean. He'll be strong like the lion. He'll be worthy of taking shelter like Himalayas. So in the purport, proper talk of even for material men, Himalayas is something worth taking shelter of, because there is so much. Like you go to the Himalayas, there's so many minerals, resources, fruits, vegetables, whatever even material people want can be obtained from the Himalayas. And even spiritual people, like for spiritual people, the Himalayas provides nice caves for meditation and nice rivers and everything. So that way he'll be worthy of taking shelter for everyone, just like the Himalayas. He'll be forbearing like the earth. And then we read in that purport how Prabhupada makes the point that now there's like atomic bombs and like the earth's surface is like, destroyed, but still the earth is forbearing. It is still holding each one of us and providing with like plants and minerals and water and everything, right? And then tolerant like parents. So Prabhupada explains that. Then in equanimity of mind, so both Brahma and Yudhishthira Maharaj is actually mentioned. And in that purport, Prabhupada says that even anyone who is in a management position, right, he will be facing so many different criticisms. And then Prabhupada mentions so nicely that how for Brahma, even the gopis, they criticize Brahma, saying that, oh, Brahma, you're so foolish, you have created this eyelids. And because of this eyelids, we cannot have darshan of Lord Krishna constantly. Imagine the love of the gopis, that when we blink, we don't even notice that we have blinked. But the gopis are saying that blink, that nimisha of moment where we blink, that we cannot see Krishna. And Brahma is so foolish that he created these eyes that have eyelids. And Prabhupada makes a point that Brahma or Yudhishthira Maharaj, anyone who is in a management, like who's in a leading or a creation or managing position, he will actually be faced with so many different criticisms. But both Brahma and Yudhishthira have shown by their example that in spite of the criticism, they are actually not disturbed. They are equanimity, right? They have that equanimity of mind that in spite of the criticism, they actually continue their duties properly, right? So in that way, Maharaj Parikshit will be as glorious as Brahma or Yudhishthira. Then as munificent as Lord Shiva, so Prabhupada in the purport talked about how Lord Shiva's other name is Ashutosh, very easily pleased. Like you do some kind of austerity and Lord Shiva is like, okay, sure, here, take. And Prabhupada gives the example of Rikrasura, how he did austerity and then he got that boon of like anyone's, he places hands on anyone's head and the head will crack into pieces. But the main point is like how Lord Shiva is so munificent. And then Narayan, the shelter of the goddess of fortune, he'll be like the resort of everyone, just like Narayan, the shelter of the goddess of fortune. So Prabhupada in the purport talks of Rama, goddess of fortune, Rama Devi. And he says that everyone is actually looking for that money, but that opulence, but they don't understand that without Vishnu, the goddess of fortune is just an illusion, right? It's just an illusion. So so when we say Narayan as the shelter of everyone, as the one who is actually resort of everyone, then Narayan is always accompanied by Lakshmi. Okay, then text 24, he said like, by following in his footsteps, he'll be as good as Lord Krishna, right? So by following the footsteps of Krishna, he'll be as good as Krishna. And Prabhupada in the purport actually makes a point that when one actually follows the instructions of Krishna, the instructions of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. So when one follows the instructions of Krishna, he is actually in contact with Krishna. And one who's in contact with Krishna, he'll naturally develop the good qualities of Krishna, right? So that way he'll have all the good qualities by following in the footsteps of Krishna. Then in magnanimity, he'll be like Ranti Dev, right? In that Prabhupada does not mention a story, but further in the 9th canto, the story of Ranti Dev, that how he actually fasting for 42 days, and then after he's ready to break his fast, and then all these like a Chandala and then the dogs, they come, and then he actually is willing to give everything, right? So in that way, he'll magnanimous, just like King Ranti Dev. And in religion, he'll be just like King Yayati. So in that purport, Prabhupada gives an elaborate description of King Yayati, his story, and then he goes even beyond what is given in Bhagavatam, and he refers to the story of Yayati, and then how initially he was so lusty, and the entire story with Sharmishta and Devayani, and then later on how he was cursed that he would lose his youth, and then he said like the only way you get your youth back is one of your sons actually exchanges the youth with you, and so on. So that story is there, but it said mainly in religion he's as glorious as Mahayati, and then in patience and like Bali Maharaj, and a staunch devotee like Prahlad Maharaj. Right? So okay, so that is up to text 25. So we'll continue with text number 26. Okay. Okay. So do we have a list of names?
Oh, just a second. I'll put it.
Yeah. Okay. So someone could start. Gopinath, would you like to start? 26.
Rajrishinam Janayita Shasta Chodpata Gaminam Nigrahita Kaleresha Bhuvo Dharmasya Karana. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome.
So if you see that first thing is Raja Rishi. Raja Rishi, we hear this name often. Right? Raja Rishi are the kings who are actually like sages, right? As good as sages, kings who are as good. And what will his role be? Maharaj Parikshit will be the father of such Raja Rishis, in the sense that even those Raja Rishis who are there, he will actually give them protection or give them shelter. And also the other way Prabhupada actually explains is that his son, King Janmejaya, it's not Prabhupada explains in purport, he'll also be a Raja Rishi. So even he'll give birth to a Raja Rishi. So both the ways Prabhupada explains, and in purport Prabhupada also talks about how a devotee of the Lord is the wisest of all men. Right? So Raja Rishi themselves are wise, but to actually be a father or a shelter of the Raja Rishis, one has to be a devotee of Lord Shri Krishna. So unless one is a devotee of Lord Shri Krishna, he cannot be the wisest of all men, and he cannot give shelter to the other Raja Rishis. And then the next point in the verse is Kalehe, right? Kale. What is Kali? Kali means quarrelsome, right? So those who are quarrelsome, then what will Maharaj Parikshit's role be? He will actually be for those, for world peace and for the sake of religion, he will actually chastise, right? He'll be the Nigrahita, he'll be the molester or the chastiser of those who are actually quarrelsome. Right? So Prabhupada explains that in the purport, that how the duty of the king is that to actually chastise the wrongdoings, and particularly the symptom, he gives an example like how later on we'll read how Parikshit Maharaj, he chastises the age of Kali, right? Why? Because in Kali, there are four things: wine, woman, gambling, and slaughter house. Right? These are our four regulative principles, right? No illicit sex, no intoxication, no meeting, no gambling. Why these are there? Because the other breaking these is actually serving Kali, right? The symptoms of Kali. So who are wise rulers of the state, they should actually take lessons from Maharaj Parikshit, how to subdue these upstarts and quarrelsome state. And then Prabhupada makes a point that these days there's like regular license, like wine, woman, gambling, all these things are made like regular, slaughterhouses everywhere. And when all these things are there, how can we expect peace in such a society, right? Hence, the rulers should learn from Maharaj Parikshit how to chastise these quarrelsome elements, and in that way, one can actually be peaceful in this world. Okay, next 27. Okay, we have the list now.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Takshakad atmano mrityum dvija putropasarjitat prapasyata upashrutya mukta sangha padam hare. Translation: after hearing about his death, which will be caused by the bite of a snake bird sent by a son of Brahmana, he will get himself freed from all material attachment and surrender unto the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him.
So, see, so beautiful, like the Brahmanas, they are not only talking, this is all like they are looking at the astrological chart and telling, oh, this is the qualities of Maharaj Parikshit. But they don't even stop at the life of Maharaj Parikshit, but saying how he's going to die. But the main point here is when he'll be cursed, then what are the two qualities he'll actually develop? He will actually be freed of all material attachment, the Mukta Sangha, and then he will Padam Harer, he'll actually take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the emphasis of the Brahmanas is not so much on the curse, but the good qualities that Maharaj Parikshit will exhibit in spite of being cursed. And that's why even Yudhishthira Maharaj, he does not care so much about the curse, but again the glorification of Maharaj Parikshit. That in spite of the curse, he will actually show these two qualities. So Prabhupada in the purport talks about this, anyway, this whole story of Takshaka, that is in the 19th chapter of this canto. So we won't go into that, how Shringi curses Maharaj Parikshit and so on. But here, the main point is, Prabhupada in the purport focuses that how material attachment and taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of God, these two are actually opposite things. You cannot have material attachment and at the same time take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. Who can say that verse from prayers of Queen Kunti to this point? Yes. Like as long as we have material attachment, particularly for these four things, Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta, and Shri, right? As long as we are aspiring for these, we cannot take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. So Prabhupada's entire purport is actually focusing on these 2 points. And also, like if you see just, if you just follow the flow of Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, as soon as Krishna starts to explain, first he says, okay, I've explained you in terms of analytical study. Now I'll explain in terms of working without attachment to results. And as soon as he starts bringing that Buddhi Yoga, the first point he actually says is one has to give up that material attachment. Because as long as a material attachment is there, he actually says, Bhogeshwara Prasaktatmanam, Bhogeshwara Prasaktanam, Teha Parta Chesna, Vyavasatmika Buddhi Samadho na Vidyate. That basically those who are too attached to sense enjoyment, then that determination, the Vyavasatmika Buddhi to take up devotional service will actually not come out. And hence, Krishna actually in that second, in chapter 2 itself, he actually says that one should free oneself from all these attachments and aversions. And then prasadam adhigachati, then one becomes qualified to receive the mercy of the Lord. Right? Raga desha vimuktesu vishyan indriyas charan atma vaishya vidyatma prasadam adhigachati. It says, when we give up this raga and dvesha, this attachment and aversion, then we prasadam adhigachati, we become qualified to receive the mercy of the Lord. So as long as we are maintaining this material attachment, we cannot take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. And also in 2nd canto, there's a verse that Prabhupada often quotes, that what does material attachment actually do to us? That we take shelter, instead of taking shelter of Krishna, we take shelter of the things we are attached to. Right? So the 214 actually makes a point. Deha patra kalidai, Deha patra kalatra dishu, Atma Saineshu Asatswapi, Tesham Pramata Nidana, Pashan Api na Pashan. The verse basically says that persons who are too attached to these Asatsu Saineshu, right? So it actually says these fallible soldiers. Who are these fallible soldiers? The body, the children, the wife, the property. We take shelter of these things. Right? We need shelter of something or the other. Either we take shelter of material or we take shelter of Krishna. And as long as we are taking shelter of material things like body, children, wife, and so on, we cannot take shelter of Krishna. So the verse says, persons devoid of Atma Tattva, they do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. So this is one of the famous verses that Prabhupada often quotes. Okay, so that's the main point Prabhupada focuses. And then, okay, so again, the further in the purport, Prabhupada makes a point. So Maharaj Parikshit, Krishna himself came in the womb of his mother to protect him. And when he was cursed, he could have actually called for Krishna's protection and got rid of the curse. Why he did not do it? We discussed this in the last class. 2 reasons. Who can say?
As for undue favor, and he
That's
was the
not
only male descendant of the Kuru dynasty.
okay, yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, main
It's
descendant.
not to
That's why
interfere
Krishna
with the-
protected. There's one more reason. Yes, Gopinath.
interfere in the time. Yeah.
Yes, he did not want to interfere with the progression of the time, and he knew Kali is coming, and he did not want to interfere with that. Right? So one, he did not want pure devotees did not ask undue favor from the Lord, and second, he knew that this is an arrangement of time. Kali is coming, so why should I disturb that arrangement, right? And why? What Divyanita Lamati said, that is Krishna actually said. Krishna said, why Krishna protected? Because he is the only one left, right, from the Kuru dynasty. So Prabhupada says that he could have actually, asked Krishna to clear out the curse, but he actually took it as a boon, right? So it was a boon to him to enable him to prepare him to go back home, back to Godhead, and he made the best use of a bad bargain. So our entire material life is actually best use of a bad bargain, because our entire existence here is in an atmosphere of Maya. Right? Everywhere around us is Maya. So in this atmosphere where everything is around in Maya, we make the best use and we actually take shelter of Krishna. Right? Okay, 28.
Jitnasitatma yatharthyo mune vyasa suyat aso hitvedam rapa gangayam yashyati adhakutobhyam. Translation. After inquiring about the proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva, who will be a great philosopher, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness.
So if you see a Sanskrit words, it's very nice. Jigyasita, Jigyasita means to inquire. So after he's cursed, what did he do? 2 things. He gave up all material attachment and he takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then in the 19th chapter of the first canto, we'll read that when he actually takes, there's a discussion whether it's Ganges or Yamuna, but Jiva Goswami says he goes to the banks of the Yamuna. But he actually takes shelter, and here, anyway, Ganges or Yamuna, but in 19th chapter in text 15, he actually says that where all the Brahmanas come, to see how Maharaj Parikshit is finally going to leave his body. And he says, oh Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul. And let Mother Ganges, the representative of Lord, also accept me in that way. For I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created bite me at once. My only desire is that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. So we see Maharaj Parikshit's condition even before meeting Sukadev Goswami. He said, I am not fearful. Whatever, I have taken shelter of Mother Ganges. I am a soul surrendered to Krishna. I have the Lord in my heart. So whatever this Takshaka is, he comes, if he bites, I don't care. My only desire is I want to relish Harikatha. So you please continue speaking Harikatha. Right? And what is a Jigyasu? And particularly here it says Vyasa Suta. Who is Vyasa Suta? The son of Vyasadeva, who is Sukadev Goswami. So he inquires from Sukadev Goswami. And what are the 2 questions he inquires? Anyone knows? Comes in 19th chapter. Okay. So
what is the what is the best thing for everyone, especially those who are about to die?
Okay.
And the second one, I don't know.
Okay. So actually, if you see in 19th chapter, he asked 2 questions to the Brahmanas. That is the question that you said. And then later on, when Sukadev Goswami walks in, then he actually offers obeisances, he glorifies Sukadev Goswami. And then the question he actually asked, that please show the way of perfection for all persons, especially for those who are going to die. So the question kind of comes twice. But the first question is, what is the way of perfection for everyone? Especially those who are going to die. So everyone is going to die. So what is the way for perfection? And the second question is, what should the man hear, chant, and remember, and what he should not hear, chant? Please explain. So these 2 questions he actually asked to Sukadev Goswami, and Canto 2 starts off with the direct answers to these questions. Okay. And then Vyasa Sutta, then Hitwa quitting idam material attachment, Gangayam on the banks of Ganga, and then Akuto Bhayam, right? He achieved the life of fearlessness. So we see that even before Sukadeva Goswami came, Maharaj Parikshit expressed that, oh, I am fearless. Whatever is the snake bug, come, let it come. I don't care for it. I am fearless, right? And later on, in the second canto, when Sukadeva Goswami starts answering, he actually says, how can you get Akuto Bhayam? Eta nirvidya mananam, ichatam akuto bhayam, yoginam api nirnasham, hare namanu kirtanam. The only way we can get that akuto bhayam, the same word which is there here, is actually hare namanu kirtanam. And because Parikshit Maharaj was actually hare namanu kirtanam, he was relishing the Hari Katha, he was in akuto bhayam, right? So he achieved that life of fearlessness. And that verse, which is a 2:112, I think, around that. Anyway, it comes around that section. Etan nirvidyamananam ichchatam akuto. It comes around the first few verses in the second canto, chapter 1. And there it actually says, constant chanting of the name of the Lord, that is the doubtless and fearless way for success for everyone. So in one question, he's actually answered, one verse he's answered both the questions. Okay. Okay, one very nice point. Prabhupada's purpose is excellent here. He actually says, Srimad Bhagavatam gives a right knowledge for one's own self. And by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can get free from material attachment and enter into the kingdom of fearlessness. Just by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll get free from all material attachment. So previously, what did we see? What is our hindrance for taking shelter of the Lord? Material attachment. By studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll get free from all material attachment. And not only that, we can enter into the kingdom of fearlessness. Akuto Bhayam will actually enter into the spiritual world. And further, okay, and further Prabhupada says this fearfulness is actually the anxiety. As Prahlad Maharaj says, Tat sadhu mane asud varya dehina sada samudigna. Those who are in this material life, sada samudigna, they are always in anxieties, right? That is our situation here in this material world, right? But one can actually liberation means getting relief from these anxieties, and this is possible only when you take to devotional service of the Lord. Then Prabhupada says a very interesting point. He says Srimad Bhagavatam gives a chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. We are just changing the quality of our anxiety. Anxiety in the material world is there, like how that verse Tat sadhu mane asur varya dehina. That is what 7. 9:30, I think, 7:9:30. That's how the Munya. So in that it says Sada Samuddigna Dhyam Asad Graha, right? This Asad Graha, this existence in this Asad is always in anxiety. But Prabhupada is saying we just have to change the quality of anxiety. So there is a famous conversation. There are actually two conversations, but I'll point out one. One is Vishnu and Swami with Prabhupada, and other is Tamal Krishna Maharaj Prabhupada. Right? So Vishnu and Swami Maharaj asked Prabhupada, how do we render perfect service to Krishna? And Prabhupada's answer is by your anxiety. How do we render perfect service to Krishna? Prabhupada is saying by your anxiety. And then he explains, if you are anxious to serve Krishna, that is the real asset. The more you increase your anxiety to serve Krishna, the more it becomes perfect. How can I love Krishna more and more? Lolyam, simply your eagerness, that's all. So if you have a pinch of that anxiety, how I can serve Krishna, you must know you are the most fortunate man. If you have that anxiety, how can I serve Krishna? How can I serve Krishna? Or, for us it's easier. How can I serve my Guru Maharaj? How can I serve the mission of Srila Prabhupada? If that is our burning question in our life, Prabhupada said you are the most fortunate. So our thing is we are not eager to get rid of anxiety. We want to change the quality of anxiety from material to spiritual. Right? And then there's a conversation with Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and Prabhupada makes a similar point. He says, just like how Mother Yashoda, she's always anxious for Krishna. Similarly, we have to become always anxious. How can I serve Krishna? How can I serve Krishna? How can I serve Krishna? So Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is saying, is giving us a chance to change the quality of anxiety from material to spiritual. And practically, you see, take any service for Krishna. Right? Particularly if you take responsibility of like leading a particular seva, always has always anxiety. And this anxiety is actually purifying, because in that anxiety we pray to Krishna, Krishna, please help, please help. Now there's a big drama coming up for Govardhan Puja. I'm sure Gopinath Acharya Prabhu and Mataji are in so much anxiety that this crop and this preparation and children, what if they forget their lines and what will this happen? And every seva, there's so much anxiety. And that anxiety is actually very purifying. That is actually showing that we want to do this service perfectly for Krishna. We want to do the service best for Krishna. And that anxiety is very good. So Srimad Bhagavatam changes. And if you don't have enough anxiety, take up a goal to the Sri Prabhupada's books. And then for sure, you will have anxiety. You cannot sleep at night. Like, how will I reach my goal? And that way we'll actually come closer to Krishna. Okay, so that is the point of anxiety. Text 29.
Sorry, I thought you did.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Iti rajna upadishya viprajataka kovidaha labdha pachitaya sarve prati jagmo swakan gruhan. Translation, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Thus, those who were expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhishthira about the future history of his child. Then, being simultaneously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes.
Okay, so this verse is concluding the section. Right, so we started this section where the Brahmana started speaking from text 19 up to the previous word. They have spoken about the qualities of Parikshit Maharaj. They have spoken about how Parikshit Maharaj, finally he'll get cursed, but he'll always take shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. He'll be Akuto Bhayam, and then he'll finally, the last part they said that he'll take instructions from Sukadeva Goswami, Vyasa Sutta. So they said all this, and after giving all this instructions, then they were sumptuously remunerated. We read previously how Maharaj Yudhishthira used to give all this charity to the Brahmanas in gold, land, villages, and so on. So he gave all that charity, and then they are returned to their home. So Prabhupada in the purport, he focuses on this. One is Jataka Kovida, that persons who are expert in astrology. And Kovida, this word comes again and again. We read, right? Kovida means those who are intelligent, and here it says Jataka Kovida, who was actually expert in performing this Jata ceremony or birth ceremony. Right? So and then the other word Prabhupada focuses on is Vipraha. Vipraha means persons who are well versed in the Vedas. Right? So that is the main theme of the purport. And Prabhupada talks about how Vedas, they give knowledge both material and spiritual. And in that, Prabhupada actually, he makes the point that he mentions two signs, and this was a question on the group also, about astrology. And Prabhupada actually makes the point that astrology and pathology, that is basically Ayurveda and astrology. He says these two sciences are actually given in the Vedas, so we can actually live, Prabhupada says, the astrology and pathology are two important branches necessary for the common man. Right, necessary for the common man. So Ayurveda, let's briefly talk about that. That if someone knows the basic principles of Ayurveda, every one of us, we have a different kind of body. And Ayurveda, the entire science is okay. First, know what is your body, and based on that, you adjust your diet and lifestyle. So you live according to your body style, and just by following the basic principles of Ayurveda, one can have a healthy life. So that is Ayurveda. And the second, astrology. So astrology, in the previous purport also, one of the purports earlier, Prabhupada made this point that it is a great science. So we are not denying the power of astrology, right? It is a great science. Now the problem is we do not have great astrologers who are really learned. To find a really qualified astrologer, it is very rare. I'm not saying they're not there. It is very rare. So what about devotees? Should we actually consult astrology? Anyway, like I feel this one, devotees, different devotees have different opinions about this. It's not a hard and fast rule. But and on the group there were some really nice points. I think Gopinath Prabhu pointed out, Mantrini Mataji pointed out some really nice points. And Divinita Mataji also had some nice points on the group. No, she didn't. Okay. So the main thing about astrology is if you know a qualified person and if you are using it to actually find out, your future, okay, now this is my bad period or this period is good. But if you're using those future predictions as a service for Lord Sri Krishna, then it is good. Like let's say it is predicted that, okay, in the next few years, you're going to have health challenges and so on. You may have some difficulty. If you know that, then mentally you can prepare yourself and say that, okay, now these difficulties are coming. Let me be more serious in my sadhana. Let me be more serious. So challenges are going to come in the next few years. Let me see how I can be determined not to be deviated in my sadhana in spite of this challenge. So that is one. The other very crucial point is, even if you are referring to astrologers, we are not taking shelter of the astrologer. We are not saying our dependence on astrology. Oh, now good time. Okay, now good time. No, our shelter is only Krishna. So astrology is okay as long as it is limited to a tool that we are using, and we are not declaring our dependence or taking shelter of that. And then third point. So first point was, okay, actually I meant 4 points. First is there may not be qualified astrologers. Second is astrology is a science, right? But even if you are taking, we should use that, predictions to actually see how it will help our growth in Krishna consciousness, right? Third point, do not take faith in the astrology that, oh, astrological chart, now it is going to come good, so that's it, I'll be happy now. No, our faith, our shelter is only Lord Shri Krishna. So don't let astrology be an hindrance to your shelter of taking shelter of Krishna. And then the fourth point is that Krishna changes our karma, right? Sarva dharma parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tam sarva papabhyo. So Krishna is changing our karma. But if you see, Krishna reduces the karma, right? But still he may give tokens of that karma to us. Right? So that's why even for devotees, astrological charts, the chart may be predicting something really severe, but Krishna may reduce it. Right? So that is that. So again, our faith is completely in Krishna. So if a devotee wants to use it, it's okay, but it's not, one should not be dependent on that astrological thing. So that's the point about astrology. So these 4 points one should remember that, and like especially for marriage, it is actually said to be good to actually before marriage, because it is hard to know when boy and girl are meeting, and even if you see the family, like what is the nature, and it is good to find a good astrological match before even going to the marriage. Okay, so that was that question. So spend some time there. Okay, now Prabhupada in the purport talks about what is Vipra, Brahmana, and Vaishnava. Right? So he says, what is a Vipra? Vipra, as Prabhupada translates as word to word, it is actually a one who is actually well versed in the Vedas. Now, if you go more specific into detail, those who are well versed in the material side, the karma kanda side, they are more referred to the Vipras. Right? Karma kanda means, okay, you want some material benefit. Okay, this is a yajna one should do, and so on. Right? So that is Vipra. Then further, those who are expert in the spiritual aspects, spiritual knowledge of the Vedas, they are Brahmanas, right? So that is Vipra Brahmana. And those who are elevated Brahmanas, engaged in the service of the Lord, they are Vaishnava. So Vipra, Brahmana, Vaishnava. So Vipra, more to do with the material knowledge in the Vedas. Brahmanas to do with the spiritual knowledge, and elevated Brahmanas engaged in devotion service. So Prabhupada explained these three, and also he talks of Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Upasana. And we have discussed this point earlier. Karmakanda is more of, an entire section of Karmakanda. You want material benefit, do so and so yagya. Jnana-kanda is more of the philosophical speculation aspect. Upasana-kanda is actually talking of different kinds of worship to the demigods, which concludes with worship of Vishnu. Right? So Upasana-kanda also has like worship of the demigods, and it finally comes to a point worshiping Vishnu. And then I think in the purport of 112 or 113, we read about these three things, and then says like how Bhagavatam is beyond all these things. Okay. Okay, next text 30. Who's next?
सयेष लोके विख्यातः परीक्षेत् इति यत् प्रभुः पूर्वं दृष्टम् अनुध्यायान् परीक्षेतन्नरेश्वरः. Translation: so his son would become famous in the world as Parikshit, examiner, because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus he would come to constantly contemplate him.
Right. So this is what was the meaning of Parikshit? To examine. And he saw Krishna in the womb, right? In the womb, and when he was in the womb, he saw the form of Krishna. And then when he was growing up, always he was thinking, where is this Krishna? Is this Krishna? Is this Krishna? Where is my Krishna? You know? And he was examining every personality to see whether he is Krishna there. Right? In that way, he was completely absorbed in thought of Krishna. Right? So Prabhupada in the purport, he says that once the impression of the transcendental form of the Lord is fixed in one's mind, one can never forget him in any circumstance. So in Parikshit Maharaj's mind, that impression of the Lord was fixed. And then throughout his life, he could not forget Krishna. Right? He was always meditating on Krishna, always contemplating, where is my Krishna? And thus his name is Parikshit. Parikshit is like how we say Pariksha Lena, right? We use the word Pariksha. Pariksha means to examine. And then also it says Anudhyanan. Anudhyanan means he was constantly contemplating. Right? This is a symptom of a pure devotee. Constantly he's thinking of Krishna. Constantly he's smaran. He's absorbed in remembrance of Krishna. And Parikshit Maharaj has this quality. So Prabhupada in the purport makes a point that Parikshit was so fortunate that at the time of his, in the womb, he got that impression of Krishna. But not everyone is so fortunate, but the parents can make the children so fortunate by, in their childhood, when they are growing up, at that time, give them the strong impression of Krishna. And once they have that impression of Krishna, like how Prabhupada says that up to 5 years old, whatever a child's baby learns, he'll remember for the rest of his life. So in that period, if he really gets a strong impression of Krishna, then throughout his life, he will not forget Krishna. So he said, parents can actually, Prabhupada is making the point that parents can make their child so fortunate by giving them the strong impression of Krishna. And Prabhupada makes his purport so beautiful by giving his own personal example. Right? He says, my father was a pure devotee of the Lord, and I was only 4 or 5 years old. My father gave me a couple of forms of Radha and Krishna. In a playful manner, I used to worship these deities along with my sister. And I used to imitate the performance of a neighboring temple of Radha Govinda. And we also know how Prabhupada used to like have his own Rath Yatra festival when he was a small child. Right? By constantly visiting the neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in connection with my own deities of play, I developed a natural affinity for the Lord. My father used to observe all the ceremonies befitting my position. Later on, these activities were suspended due to my association in schools and college. But in my youthful days, when I met my spiritual master, Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, again I revived my old habit. And the same playful deities became my worshipful deities in proper regulation. This was followed up until I left the family connection. And I'm pleased that my generous father gave the first impression, which has developed later into regulative devotional service by his divine grace. So Prabhupada is so beautiful. Even in the next chapter, we'll see the purport. Prabhupada gives his own personal example to elaborate the point. So the main point here is, once we get that impression of Krishna, then we'll never forget that impression for the rest of life. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Bhajan he actually said, "Ek bar rase mature." Just once you actually relish that nectar of the holy name. Because once you relish, then whole life will be like, oh, that relish will always be absorbed in that relishing of the name. So ek bar rase mature. Once we need. That's why we pray to Krishna. Krishna, please, once, just give me that taste for chanting. Just once give me. Because once it comes, then your whole life. Okay. So even Prahlad Maharaj actually says that Komara Acharit Pragya Dharman Bhagavatan Iya Dullava Manusanjano Tad Api Adruvam Arthada. Okay, that the verse actually says that one who's sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life, like 5 years of life, right, to practice devotional service, giving up all other engagements. The human life is dullabham manusham janma, very rare. Tad api adruvam arthada. Yet it's actually very meaningful, because in this human form of life, one can actually attain all perfection. Okay, next 31.
स राजपुत्रो ववृधे आशु शुक्ल इवोडुप आपूर्यमाणः पितृभिः काष्ठाभिरिवसो अन्वहम्. Translation. As the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full activity and the full facilities of his guardian grandfathers.
Yeah. So here further it is described, like after describing how Maharaj Parikshit's consciousness, that he is going to be always examining Krishna, he's going to be in constant remembrance of Krishna. Now further Sutta Goswami is actually saying, and he grew up very nicely, just like the waxing moon, right? So Shukle Paksha, right? So as the moon waxes, grows, similarly, Maharaj Parikshit grew very luxuriantly. Next, 32. And he was actually, how was he growing up? By giving all facilities and care by his guardian grandfather. So his father was already passed away before his birth, Abhimanyu. So he was given all protection by grandfather, all the Pandava. Okay, text 32.
Hare Krishna. Yakshamano ashvamedhena gnati droha jihashya rajalabde dhano dadyu nanyatra khara dandaha dandehe dandayo. Just at the time King Yudhishthira was considering performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from his sins incurred from his fighting with the king's men, but he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside the fines and tax collection.
Yeah. So now after describing our Maharaj Parikshit, now we are like few verses will talk about Maharaj Yudhishthira, how he's performing this Ashwamedha Yagya, this horse sacrifice Ashwamedha Yagya. So okay. So basically this verse is actually making a point that how we read previously, even in chapter 8, how Yudhishthira, after the battle of Kurukshetra, was still, lamenting with so many 640 million people on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. All of them, all that death, so many people died. It's just because of me, and he was still lamenting. And then he had this desire to perform this Ashwamedha Yagya to actually get free from all sins. So certainly there was no sins on the part of Maharaj Yudhishthira, because he was acting on the will of the Lord himself, but to set the right example, that how, Prabhupada makes a point, not in this, the next purport, that how the king should be so careful, like Maharaj Yudhishthira, that in spite of there is no sin on his part, he's actually lamenting and thinking that, oh, there's some sin on my part, that so many people have been killed. Right? So he wanted to do this Ashwamedha Yagya, but he became anxious to get some wealth. for there was no surplus funds outside of the fines and taxes. So this is particularly referring to after the battlefield of Kurukshetra. In that battle, all the funds and everything was actually kind of empty. Right? And hence to perform this Ashwamedha Yajna, Maharaj Parikshit needed extra funds. Right? So how did he calculate those funds? That is actually the next verse. And also in 32, Prabhupada points out that how Maharaj Yudhishthira actually, when he was talking to Bhishma Pitama had given him this instruction to perform the Ashwamedha Yajna. So he was acting under the instruction of Bhishma Pitama. So Vijay Mata, you had this question on the group about like how we read previously that how the opulence of Maharaj Yudhishthira is compared to that of the heavenly planets, right? So how can it say that there is no money for doing Ashwamedha Yajna? Right? So particularly there, one way we have to see that Bhagavatam is not chronological, right? We have seen that already, right? Because now Ashwamedha Yajna and the last few verses will say Krishna is now leaving for Dwarka. But we already read before how Krishna, when he was leaving, how Hastina, entire chapter on how the ladies of Hastinapur prayed and how Krishna was received in Dwarka. But again, here is coming to Krishna is leaving for Dwarka. So there's it is not chronological order. That's very clear from how the flow of the Bhagavatam is. So particularly this is referring to the time when after the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the treasury was empty. Then Maharaj Parikshit had to do Ashwamedha Yajna. And then previously when we read, that is the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Right? So that is pointed out. Okay, 33.
Tat abhipretam alaksham dhartaro achyuta choditaha dhana prahimam ajaharu udichadishi bhurishaha. Understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brothers as advised by infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north left by King Maruta.
So they wanted more wealth, right? So to perform the Ashwamedha Yajna. And then Achyuta, the infallible Lord Shri Krishna, was always there, their well-wisher, he advised them that you should actually go and collect sufficient riches from the north. Okay, now, why the north? Because that is the entire story of Maharaj Marutta, right? So Prabhupada in the purport, he explains the entire story of Maharaj Marutta, where he was very pious king, and he once performed the Shankara Yajna. And by that Shankara Yajna, he actually gained an entire mountain peak of gold. Imagine in the Himalayas. And Prabhupada actually in the purport, he says, is there somewhere in the Himalayas? And modern adventurers may try to find it there. So Prabhupada is making the point. So we want the entire mountain of gold. Let's go to the Himalayas. Maybe we can find a mountain of gold there. But it is still there. Prabhupada, even in his lectures, I've heard Prabhupada making the point that it is still there. But it's somewhere in the Himalayas. No one knows where it is. So, so there was this entire gold, the mountain of gold that Maharaj Marutta got by this Shankara Yajna. And then by that, he was actually, he was a very pious king. There was no diseases in his entire kingdom. And then when he used to do lots of sacrifices. And by the sacrifices, all, an entire sacrifices always accompanied by giving charity. So he used to give charity to the Brahmanas, right? In the charity, he used to give them so much gold. And when he was serving like prasadam after any ceremony, important aspect is prasadam, he used to serve them on gold plates. Right? So after having prasadam on gold plates, they used to see gold plate, and then they put it in trash can, And then the brahmanas used to get so much gold. They said, so much gold, so heavy. I don't want to carry it. They used to just leave it and they used to walk away. So much excess gold. And Achyuta, Lord Krishna is telling that, all this gold actually belongs to the king. So go and collect all this gold. And that's why Achyuta advised them, all the brothers, that go to the north, and King Maruta had all these mountains of gold, and all this gold which was left by the Brahmanas. In dustbins, you'll find gold. There is so much gold. Go and bring that gold, and you can use that for the Yajna. Okay, so that's and then Prabhupada is actually making the point that, imagine for Ashwamedha Yajna, Maharaj Yudhishthira needed so much gold, so much money. Now in this age, like gold, like even get 1 gram of gold is so expensive, right? To get 1 gram of gold. And Prabhupada says, the success of a particular type. Okay. Prabhupada says in this yagya, the main in this age, the main yagya is Sankirtan yagya, as initiated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we don't have the qualified priest, and we don't have so much Lakshmi to actually perform this. So just do Harinam Sankirtan. Okay. 34.
Tena samvrita sambharo dharmaputro yudhishthiraha vaji medaistribhir bhito yagyai samayajat dharim. By those riches, the king could procure the ingredients for 3 horse sacrifices. Thus, the pious king Yudhishthir, who was very fearful after the battle of Kurukshetra, pleased Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead.
So when you read the translation, you can already kind of predict that what is Prabhupada's focus on this purport. Right? So one thing is for sure that the point that please Lord Hari, right? We know for sure Prabhupada in the purport will talk about that all the sacrifices, the purpose of the sacrifices is to please Lord Hari, right? Prabhupada's devotion is very evident. So yeah, in the purport, Prabhupada says, Prabhupada talks about how there was so much gold left by Maruta from all the sacrifices, and Krishna actually said, go and get all that gold. And also Prabhupada makes a point that, that even that, okay, the Brahmanas, okay, they were so qualified, they don't, they say, okay, so much gold, what will you do? They left it. But even the regular citizens did not go and claim gold. Imagine if there's a sacrifice and say like, oh, there is gold, I left that. Everyone will run. Everyone will leave everything, run and get gold. But at that time, even the citizens were so satisfied with all the necessities of life that gold, kya karna? No use, leave it. So even the citizens did not worry to get gold. That is the, the satisfaction of a person. If you have the basic necessities of life, then, okay, good house, nice food, okay, sufficient clothing. What else do you need? What else do you need? Right? That is the, that is a normal person's thinking. But, in Kali Yuga, everyone is greedy. Accumulate, accumulate, accumulate. If I don't accumulate, how will I survive? And so on. Right? So Prabhupada said, therefore, not inclined to accept unnecessary productive enterprises for sense gratification. They were just satisfied with basic necessities. So even they did not take that goal. And here in this purport, Prabhupada talks about how Maharaj Yudhishthira, one should learn from Maharaj Yudhishthira that he did not actually commit any sin because he was actually under the instruction of Lord Sri Krishna, but still he was thinking that, oh, I have committed sin. So similarly, he said, that means, what does that mean? That unintentional sins are committed in our daily occupational discharge of duties. And to counteract such unintentional crimes, one must perform sacrifices as recommended in the scriptures. So even in our daily occupational duties, there may be some sinful activities, right? So everything that we do should be done as a yagya. Yagyartha karmanyo anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. If it is not done as a yagya, there will be bondage. There will be sinful reaction. Like just like, taking a fruit. If you are not, Krishna says, if you're just taking that fruit and you're not offering, then you're a thief because it's not you who created it. Right? So there is sin there also, right? So hence everything should be done as a sacrifice. And sacrifice means should be done for the pleasure of Lord Shri Krishna. Right? And then Prabhupada says, he compares Maharaj Yudhishthira to the current government, and he says, like, imagine Maharaj Yudhishthira was thinking that he had done sin, but no sin. But just imagine the amount of sins committed consciously or unconsciously by the untrained population of Kali Yuga, right? And who have no way to perform sacrifice to please the Supreme Lord. Therefore, one should actually do the sacrifice. What is that? Kirtanad eva Krishnasya mukta sangha param vajet. Just do Harinam, Hari Kirtan, right? And by that Kirtan, that is the highest sacrifice. We can have all success in life. Okay. Next verse.
Ahuto Bhagavan Ragnya Yajayitva Duje Nipam Uvasa Katichin Masan Suridam Priya Kamyaya. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, being invited to the sacrifices by Maharaj Yudhishthir, saw to it that they were performed by qualified twice-born Brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months.
And so we have read this before, right? The Lord remained for a few months just to, because Yudhishthira was lamenting so much, the Lord remained, and also to give, special care to his sister Subhadra Devi. He actually stayed for a few months. So again, the same thing has come here. Right? And then also another important point here is that it was Lord Shri Krishna who saw that this yajna was done by the qualified brahmanas. Right? Qualified brahmanas. So Prabhupada points out in the purport that any yajna to be successful, that means the brahmana should be qualified. And Lord Shri Krishna was personally making sure that these brahmanas were twice born who are actually qualified by proper training and initiation. Right? So Lord Shri Krishna made sure that was done. Okay, last verse.
Hare Krishna. Tato Rajagna Janataha Krishnasya Saha Bandhubihi Yayu Dwaravatim Brahmana Sa Arjuno Edubihir Vrataha. Hare Krishna. Translation: O Saunaka, thereafter the Lord, having bade farewell to King Yudhishthira, Draupadi, and other relatives, started for the city of Dwaraka, accompanied by Arjuna and other members of the Edu dynasty.
Yeah. So basically, and we have discussed this before also, how Lord Krishna, he left to Dwarka. So here again is saying he bade farewell to Yudhishthira, Draupadi. So Krishnaya is actually Krishna with a long A is actually a name of Draupadi. So he bade farewell to all of them and he left to the city of Dwarka. Okay. So that ends chapter 12. Okay. So so there were so many questions on the group, and I think the answers were really good. Is there any particular question that needs further discussion?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, ma'am.
Prabhuji, I understand that Bhagavatam is not in the chronological order, and also it was the wish of Lord Hari that the brothers should go and collect that gold because it belongs to the king. But Prabhuji, how can we talk about the opulence of Maharaj Yudhishthir and his worldly possessions before the battle of Kurukshetra?
No, it is not before the battle of Kurukshetra. Like all the previous what we read was afterwards is talking of, how Maharaj Yudhishthir, his exemplary rule. See, now, okay, let's see in the starting of this chapter when it was talked about, when they asked about, okay, tell us about Parikshit Maharaj, his birth and his activity. So they are talking about Maharaj Yudhishthir, and now they are talking after the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir. So imagine the king has ruled for a long time, and then you would say that the highlight of his entire ruling was that he had so much opulence, even greater than the heavenly planets. And then now it's coming to a specific time, right after the battle of Kurukshetra. That time the funds were empty. Hence they had to do this.
Okay. So the previous verse that we read is after.
The entire rule of Maharaj Yudhishthira after the battle of Kurukshetra till they retired. And if you see the entire picture, then certainly you will say that, oh, the opulence is as glorious as even that of the heavenly planet. So that's what you would normally say, that highlight of the entire rule. So.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? One was also about the whole discussion about Pancharatrika Vidhi, right? In Bhagavad Vidhi. So can we go back to Godhead without doing Pancharatrika Vidhi? Yes, we can go back. Right? Prabhupada clearly says in one of the purports, I can share the link. I have that point written here. Prabhupada says clearly we can, just by hearing and chanting, we can go back home, back to Godhead. But the only thing is, because our mind is so disturbed in this age of Kali Yuga, that it becomes harder for us to focus on chanting and hearing. Right? So hence it is actually Prabhupada recommending both of these as parallel tracks. Pancharatrika Vidhi, Bhagavad Vidhi. Deity worship and samskar, and Bhagavad Gita hearing and chanting. Both of them should run like parallel tracks, like a train. Okay? But if someone's mind is stable, and you just focused on Harinam, Hari Kirtan, you can chant the whole day, you can hear Bhagavatam the whole day, you can study, certainly you can go back home. Okay. Any other questions? Any other?
Prabhu, in this connection, just have to say that I have heard a personal question I asked to His Holiness Bhakti Krishna Maharaj, that whenever we have Harinam initiations, I asked him that what is the purpose of having the yagna, because so then because it's not needed, because it's not needed after. So he explained this, that eventually when we go progress in Kali Yuga, this will not happen, because purity of of the fire sacrifice, brahmanas, everything, mantra pronunciation, everything will deteriorate. But the only thing that will stay at the time is Sankirtan. But the point is that making the yagna and you taking the vows in front of the fire sacrifices, it creates an impression that I have vowed to Krishna to follow my regulative principles. So that will remain in your mind forever. Won't break the that's how Prabhupada also said that, when we have impressions of the deities in the mind, we will not forget it. So the strong impression of, I was witnessed by so many sadhus, I was witnessed by Radha Golokananda, I was witnessed by yagna, fire, So
and that's the whole point of samskar. Samskar means an impression. And when you are actually taking the vow in front of a fire yagya, in front of deities, it forms an impression. The same thing about marriage. Why is marriage done so elaborately? Why? Because it forms an impression that we did it in front of hundreds of people. Now maintain your marriage vows, whatever comes, So all this is samskar, it forms impression. And, right now, yes, as we progress, we want, but at least right now, the basic yagyas that have been samskars and yagyas that have been recommended, we should do it again, because our mind is more disturbed, our mind and body, we are not so, I should find that exact thing that Prabhupada clearly makes that point. But that's the point. Let's see that. Okay, any other questions? Let's see if you can find that exact.
Hey Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, like as long as we have material attachment, surrendering to Lord is not possible. Prabhuji, like so can you elaborate a little bit, like like having family, having jobs, earning money, savings, so yeah.
So I'll answer your question, Prabhu. 1 minute, I just found this section. So here Prabhupada says, this is in purport of 4.13.3. So there are two different ways of approaching the Supreme Lord. One is called Bhagavat Marg, the way of Srimad Bhagavatam. The other is Pancharatrika Vidhi. Pancharatrika Vidhi is a method of temple worship, and Bhagavad Vidhi is a system of the 9th process, which begins with hearing and chanting. The Krishna conscious movement accepts both processes simultaneously and thus enables one to make steady progress on the path of realization. So both processes are accepted simultaneously. And then also the question that can we go back to Godhead without the Pancha? So here, so Prabhupada says, it is Srimad Bhagavata's opinion that the process of deity worship is not actually necessary, just as the specific prescriptions of the Pancharatra and other scriptures do not have to be followed. The Bhagavatam enjoys that even without practicing deity worship, one can achieve complete success of human life by any of the devotion process, like hearing, chanting, etc. Nonetheless, Vaishnavas follow the path of Sri Narada and his successors, endeavor to establish a proper relationship with the Lord by receiving the grace of a bona fide spiritual master through initiation. And in this tradition, the devotees are obliged at the time of initiation to begin engaging in deity worship. So although deity worship is not essential, the material conditioning of most candidates for devotional service requires that they engage in this activity, right? So that's the main point. So it is not essential, but the material conditioning of most candidates for devotional service requires them to engage in this activity.
Oh, can you please cite the lecture or class or whatever?
This is on Bhakti Sandhar by Jiva Goswami, cited in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 15.108. Chapter 15, text 108. Okay. So Prabhu's question about material attachments. So, how we see in Maharaj Yudhishthir's life, right? He had all the opulence, right? He had brothers, he had Draupadi, such a qualified wife. Everything was there. But where was his focus? His focus was only on Krishna. Right? His focus was only on Krishna. Like we read the words such as Nispriha Sarva Kamebhyo. He had no personal ambition for sense gratification. And then Krishna Padanu Sevaya. He was always engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And also, in spite of having all the opulences, it's saying that he is absorbed in Mukunda Manaso. His mind was absorbed in Mukunda. So just like how Maharaj Yudhishthira, in spite of ruling the entire world, having all those opulences, having a proper, a glorious family, brothers, wife, still his mind was in Krishna. So similarly for us, yes, we have family, we have house, we have property, we have bank balance, we have all the mortgage payments. But while we are doing all those things, where should be our consciousness? Our consciousness should be at Krishna. Krishna consciousness. That's why our entire society is International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And for developing that Krishna consciousness, what all we have to do to take care of family, we do all the needful. So our thinking should be in that way. Our purpose of life is to re-establish our relationship with Krishna. Our whole goal is Krishna consciousness. And for that, whatever is needed in terms of our family, in terms of my housing, in terms of my finance, everything, I just do the needful for developing my Krishna consciousness. Right? So our main principle is Anukulasya Krishna Sankalpa, Pratikulasya Varjana. Accept everything that's favorable for Krishna consciousness and reject everything that is unfavorable for Krishna consciousness. So yes, we have property, we have all those things, but our focus should be towards Krishna. So nothing wrong in having all those things, but use everything as, yes, Krishna has given all this to me, hence I will use all this in Krishna's service. And Krishna is a proprietor. He'll give, he'll take, whatever he does, but my main thing is to continue my devotion to him. Is that okay, Venkat Prabhu?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay.
So in this connection of like when Pratikula Savarjanam, that in this astrological, say suppose you have an astrological match of say 80% with someone who's not a devotee, but you have a 40% of match with the person who is a devotee. What should be the check?
Go ask your guru, ask senior devotees, and let them. That's why it's so important that even when deciding, we are not putting our entire faith on astrology. Okay, we say, okay, this is what is the astrology. This is a science, right? This is science. So this is a match. This is a match. Okay, 80%, 40%. Go to your mentors, go to your guru, and go to people who know both of them and say, okay, this is what it is. You help me make a decision. So that's why so important the role of mentors and the role of spiritual master in our life. Right? So that's why the point is we don't put our full faith in astrology. We use it as a tool, and then we put our faith in Vaishnavas and Guru and Krishna. So, okay, Ratnavati?
I had a question about some other point that you made in class.
Okay.
Yeah. You were mentioning about material anxiety and spiritual anxiety, and how you just have to transform it. If you take up some service for Krishna, then you'll get that difference of spiritual anxiety. How can I please my Guru and Krishna? But I also feel that that sometimes when there's anxiety in service, sometimes it can cross the line where it's like about me more than about Krishna. It's more about like, oh, what will people think if I make some error? And then it can become more about my own false ego. And then we can say, oh, that's spiritual anxiety, but could actually be a sign that we're not doing the right thing. We're not in the right mood, consciousness. Can you explain more about that?
So when we are actually in spiritual anxiety, we can see what is our consciousness at that time. If it is truly spiritual anxiety, though we'll be in anxiety that, okay, how can I do this? We are always praying to Krishna. We are in the mood that, Krishna, please, I'm doing this for your pleasure. I just want to please you. Or Prabhupada, for you, I want to distribute 1,000 Bhagavatams. Prabhupada, please help me. That mood is connecting with Krishna. And as soon as that connection is there, That connection itself is, because how we are reading that when we are thinking about Krishna, Krishna is personally there. That connection itself gives us strength. It actually gives us that that reciprocation or that bliss in Krishna consciousness. Like how we read our devotees, though it may appear that they're crying, but they are having the highest bliss. So though we may be in anxiety, but that is the highest bliss for a devotee. Because that bliss is in service of Krishna. Now, if that anxiety is more of like, oh, what will people think about me? And, then you can see that that anxiety is not sustainable. We are doing the service, but, that anxiety is like, it's not inspiring us to do further services. Like, oh, I have to do this now, I have to do this now. So anxiety is spiritual when it's actually keeping us in consciousness of Krishna. We are praying to Krishna. We are connecting more with Krishna. And when we have that connection, the more pure the connection is, the more we'll feel the bliss of experiencing Krishna in our life, in every service.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
yes, ma'am.
Maybe this is a stupid question. I have one question on this note, Prabhuji. So this anxiety, converting this matter to spirit, that is good, but ignoring our duties and spending this time to do devotional service only, is that correct? Like, let's say 8 to 4 you have duty, but like you are so much dedicated, you want to do this devotional service, and you are ignoring your duties, and probably that is falling on others. But you are making use of this time for devotional service. How do I understand this?
See, again, going back to the point, our main purpose is to serve Krishna. Our main purpose is to RRA, right? Reform our rebellious nature, rebellious attitude, right? Reformation of our rebellious attitude. So yes, we have to work, we have to do things to maintain our livelihood, pay all the mortgages, all those things. But even at work, we can see when we are working, we should think that yes, Krishna is my boss, I'm working to please Krishna. And in that consciousness, we actually, like, okay, my philosophy is do the minimum required to actually sustain your job. That is my philosophy. And, you work in your office, but do whatever is bare minimum that is required to actually have your job, whatever, doing your duties and so on. But, there's one point where we can actually, focus so much on a job that it is more of we are working on a desire of personal ambition that, oh, I want to become the boss, I want to become this, I want to become this. So what is our motivation? I would go back to that. And then the division of time, like, okay, are we spending enough time to do my work? It is a personal, it is a personal judgment that everyone has to see that, okay, in my job, if I'm not doing my job properly, it is putting some strain on this person, and that basically means I'm not doing my job properly. So do it just proper enough so you can focus on your Krishna consciousness. That's our main principle. And then I think that your question is something that's very specific, and then you could pray to Krishna and ask, like, Krishna, this is how is my situation, and I'm using this time in your service. It said okay, and pray to Krishna, and Krishna actually, he's so reciprocal, right? He's so reciprocal. You pray to him, and he reveals and helps us. We have a comment that Mati saying, "Dear Krishna, I told my husband in the reply to send that find Krishna in your coding in program." Okay. Yeah, the main thing is to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. That's our main thing. So whatever minimum we have to do to keep our job, and in that, we always try to think about Krishna, have some kirtans or a mind. That's why the morning program is so important, that we have the sadhana, strong japa, strong Bhagavatam reading in the morning. That throughout the day, though we were doing like treating patients, doing this, we have that right consciousness.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay, so now I think we should. I was thinking we can just take an early break today, because we are going to move to the next chapter, and then we'll come back and do 1 hour 20 minutes of chapter 13. Any other points from this chapter 12?
Prabhu, there is one question that Gopinath Acharya Prabhu asks, that why are the denizens of heavenly planets are amazed with the opulence of Maharaj Yudhishthira? That answer was not like not much given.
I think Ratnalika gave an answer. Let's see. Okay, that kind of question. So, what is the question? That why the
Question is for Prabhu, right? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Question is the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.27 supports or Prabhupada's purport describes opulence of heavenly planets to be much more than the earth. So in 112.6, why would the residents of heaven get enchanted by the opulence of Maharaj Yudhishthira?
I answered it, but I don't know if
Okay, the answer was what?
I answered that because of Krishna's personal love and attention, presence, and blessings on his great devotee Yudhishthira Maharaj, the opulence of his kingdom could surpass the heavenly planets, which normally wouldn't happen on the earth planet.
Right. I think that's the main point, that because Maharaj Yudhishthira is a devotee of Lord Shri Krishna, he had actually more opulence even than that of Indra. But generally that's not the case. So whenever he talks of like heavenly planets have more opulence, that is normally the situation. Earthly planet, higher planetary systems, they have more opulence. They have Nandakanan Gardens, they have all these apsaras, all these, sense gratification things. But that is, generally. But because Maharaj Yudhishthira was a devotee, such a glorious personality that Krishna personally is residing there, and all the different demigods used to actually visit, Maharaj Yudhishthira. Narad Muni used to come to Narad Yudhishthira ashram, and because of that, in that reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, it actually became even more glorious than the planets.
And when the funds were depleted, how Lord Krishna advised them to get the money from the north, all that gold.
So, Prabhu, if that is the case,
is that a question to your?
No, Prabhuji, I was just adding it to that when the funds were depleted because of the Kurukshetra war, how Lord Krishna advised them to go get all the gold from the north.
So when we are discussing right now Yudhishthira Maharaj's reign, we are particularly talking of the period after the battle of Kurukshetra to the time they retired. Right? So if you see that entire period, then we are talking of their opulence. Yes, Adivan.
So, Prabhu, I mean, like, how demigods are, very faithful servants of the Lord. They also have association of Upendra with them, practically the Lord is their brother, same mother, So, I mean, why would they be,
But still, we cannot compare the devotion of Maharaj Yudhishthira and the devotion of Indra.
Because that is like very personal and pure devotion.
Are sakam bhaktas, right? They still have their material desire. But Yudhishthira Maharaj is a pure devotee of Lord Shri Krishna. Right? So in spite of having everything, he is actually always Mukunda Manasa, right? Always absorbing Krishna. So that caliber of a devotee of Maharaj Yudhishthira, we cannot compare him with Indra. Right?
I was also thinking on this point that will it be correct to say that, for heavenly planets, they have not seen this kind of opulence on the earth. Say like, suppose you see a beggar driving a Rolls Royce, so you're like, wow, so maybe they were not accustomed of seeing this sort of opulence before. So that's why, well, they were attracted towards opulence of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maybe we take birth in his kingdom. Also, we'll get personal association of Krishna and enjoy this kind of opulence.
Right. So that point is that maybe they have not seen such opulence on the earthly planet. At the same time, it says in text 6 that they were aspiring for the opulence of the earth. So not only they were impressed, but they were aspiring that so much opulence. So certainly it was more than that of the. Okay.
Prabhuji, what you said, Yudhishthira Maharaj is Mukunda?
Mukunda Manaso. It is text 6 of 12.6. Manaso means in mind. Gopinath Acharya Prabhu, is that? You had the answer to that question.
No, I was saying just that question when I was contemplating, I was also thinking, well, Mataji answered that, that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lakshmipati. So they are also seeing from that perspective that, yeah, it's Vaikuntha and then, you know, heavenly planets, they don't have that association. So having association of Krishna himself is, in himself, is the opulence of the entire universe, or all the universes rather. So,
yes, bro. And also, like, the other point that comes to my mind is that it wasn't only the wealth, right? We read previously, it was Sampada was one, then Kritava, Loka, Mahishi, Bratara, Mahi, and then Jambudvipa. Like in text 5, it actually says that opulence was not only of wealth, but also his cooperation with his brothers, his glorious wife, his other properties, everything together. So that was the... Okay, so let's take a break. This question answer is very nice, but you know, we will not proceed further in Bhagavata. So let's take 5 minutes break. 8:40 we'll resume. Oh, Vijay Mate, do you have anything?
Prabhuji, I was just saying that if you get time, I know you're very busy, but could you please post like every week or listen to this particular lecture or memorize these verses as you used to do before?
Yes, yes. Okay, Mate. I
Thank you
actually
so
just
much.
hearing one proper lecture. It's so brilliant. I said, I have to post this next time.
Yeah, and just guide that or memorize these verses this week. So thank you so
Okay,
much.
Mate. Thank you. And also, exam, this Wednesday is okay? Will it work for most people? Because next Saturday there is Vyas Puja, so I think many of them will be busy, you know, preparing cooking and not able to do it. But would Wednesday evening work? Or what about Saturday evening? We could do Wednesday evening and Saturday evening, 2 options.
Saturday evening works for me, Prabhuji, not Wednesday evening.
Okay, Saturday evening, 8 to 9. Okay, Saturday evening, I don't know. Okay. So please let me know. You know, we'll plan these 2 days. And like last time, I was more open and I gave more flexibility. But you know, I want to just fix 2 dates, either this or this. You know, and everyone can. And I hope everyone was able to see your attendance and your marks and everything. So attendance is, yeah, I see some of them, you know, you're like 50% attendance. So please try to make up with the attendance. So at least 70%. So that still gives 30% time when you have some other engagements and, you know, you're unable to attend it for the travel or things like that. But still 70% is try to maintain.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, where is that link? The Google link.
It should be there on your Google, because once I already shared with you. So if you go to your Google Drive with your login, you should see your folder there. I can send, if you are not able to access, and at least 2 of them said they were not able to access, I resend them the link. So if you're not able to access, please send me a message and I'll resend the link to you.
Oh, okay, Prabhuji.
Okay, let's take a break quickly. Please come back in 5 minutes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. So please come back. Continue. Okay, so we are going to start off with chapter number 13. Okay, so Dhritarashtra quits home. So again, if you remember in chapter 12, so what's the connection between chapter 12 and 13? In chapter 12, like we started off with again Sonakadi Rishi saying that, okay, we had asked you the question of Parikshit Maharaj, and then you went here, you started off with Krishna's journey to Dwarka and the presence of Hastinapur, and then here, all those things. But now let's come back to Maharaj Parikshit, right? So then he talks about, okay, that's chapter 12, Maharaj Parikshit. These are his birth and the Brahmana's prediction of all his qualities, everything is done. Now, the next section is naturally when Maharaj Parikshit becomes a king and he gets coronated, and then he actually defeats Kali. But before that episode of Maharaj Parikshit becoming the king, he still, Suta Goswami still has to come like in between, draw the connection of how Pandavas will retire, right? And before the Pandavas retire, Dhritarashtra is still there. So Dhritarashtra has to leave the palace first. So this chapter will talk about Dhritarashtra leaving the palace. Then Lord Krishna departs. So then we'll talk of Lord Krishna departs. Then it will talk of Pandavas, they retire. And then after that, the next chapter will talk of Parikshit's coronation and then his activities. Right? So there are 3 chapters in between 13, 14, and 15 that will talk about Dhritarashtra retirement, Lord Krishna's departure, and then Pandavas, they retire. So these 3, and then we come back and then we'll talk about Parikshit Maharaj. So if you see, Bhagavatam is not in a hurry. It's really taking time and explaining different things. But all are like, my experience with this, Bhakti, every time I prepare for a chapter, I'm like, oh, this is my favorite chapter. And the next chapter, I'm like, this is my favorite chapter. Every chapter, there's so much nectar. So even this chapter, it's a big chapter, 60 verses, was such a wonderful chapter, like so practical chapter, for each, like one way this chapter can give us like so much inspiration in our spiritual life in our sadhana. So we'll discuss that. So let's, so this chapter, since there are 60 verses, the way I'm thinking we'll do it is we'll do it in sections, right? We'll do it in different sections. So the first section, so if you have your Subodhini, you can just follow along. First section, text 1 to 6, Vidura returns from pilgrimage. And then after he returns, then how do the Hastinapur residents, they welcome welcome Vidura, and what is the dialogue between Yudhishthira and Vidura, that is explained. And then Vidura, he starts instructing Dhritarashtra, and why Vidura came back, right? What was his main reason for coming back? He had already taken Vanaprastha, so why did he again come back to the palace? And then that is explained that all his focus was on Dhritarashtra. And then he starts instructing Dhritarashtra. That section from 18 to 28 is really heavy instruction that Vidura is actually going to give Dhritarashtra. Really heavy, strong, and very powerful instructions. So he gives those instructions, and then Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Queen Kunti, Vidura, they all leave the palace. And then because they left, then Yudhishthira Maharaj, like once every day morning after his morning duty, he used to come and offer obeisances to them. And all of a sudden he comes and sees they're not there. And then he asks Sanjay, what happened? Did they actually, maybe I didn't take good care of them and hence they left, And then Yudhishthira Maharaj expresses that, and he asks Sanjay, do you know where they are? And Sanjay said, I have been cheated. Always Dhritarashtra was with me and now he left without even informing me. And why did he leave without informing any one of his relatives? That is also will be explained by Vidura. And then after the section, then Narad Muni actually comes towards the end, and then he gives instructions to Yudhishthira Maharaj about where, how he should not worry about his Dhritarashtra and Gandhari and Vidura, and how what happens, like he actually, Narad Muni tells how Dhritarashtra and all finally they leave their body. So he gives all these instructions to Yudhishthira Maharaj, telling him not to worry about that. Right? So that is the flow of the chapter. So we'll do section wise. So first section is Vidura returns from pilgrimage, text 1 through 6. So we are going to read 6 verses together, and then I'm going to explain those 6 verses. So let's go ahead one by one, please.
Hare Krishna, text 1, Sutta Uvacha, Viduras Tirtha Yatrayam, Maitriya Datmano Gatim, Gyatvad Dashtin Na Puram, Taya Vapat Vivista Sita. Shri Sutta Goswami said, while traveling on a pilgrimage, Vidura received knowledge of the destination of the self from the great sage Maitreya and then returned to Hastinapur. He became as well versed in the subject as he desired.
Next 2. So we'll come back to the verse that I'm going to explain, but we're just going to read 6 verses, so you know the flow. Next 2.
Kshatta Kausaravagraha Jataika Bhakti Govinde Tebhyas Gopararanaha. Translation: after asking various questions and becoming established in the transcendental loving service of Lord Krishna, Vidura retired from putting questions to Maitreya Muni.
Text 3 and 4.
Hare Krishna. Tam bandhum agatam drishtva dharma putraha sahanujaha dhritarashtra yutsacha shutaha saradvataha pratha Gandhari Draupadi Brahman Subhadra Chottaro Kripi Anyascha Jamayaha Pandor Natayaha Satu Sashutaha Striyaha. Translation. When they saw Vidura return to the palace, all the inhabitants, Maharaj Yudhishthira, his younger brothers, Dhritarashtra, Satyaki, Sanjaya, Kripacharya, Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, Uttara, Kripi, many other wives of Kauravas, and other ladies with children, all hurried to him in great delight. It so appeared that they had regained their consciousness after a long period.
It's the next text.
Next 5. Pratyujagmuh prahashena pranam tanva evagatam abhi sangamya vidhivat parishvanga bhivadinai. Translation. With great delight, they all approached him, as if life had returned in their bodies. They exchanged obeisances and welcomed each other with embraces.
Text 6.
Mumucha prema baspaugam irha utkantya katara rajatam arayam chakre tasana parigraham. Due to the anxieties and long separation, they all cried out of affection. King Yudhishthira then arranged to offer sitting accommodations and a reception.
Maybe one more we can do. Text 7. Who's next?
Yeah. Tam bhuktavantam vishrantamasīnam sukhamasane prasnayavanato raja prahatesham cha shrunatam. Translation is Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. After Vidur are simultaneously and took sufficient rest, he was comfortably seated. Then the king began to speak to him, and all who were present were listened.
Okay. So this is the first section of this chapter. So basically in this chapter, you see story-wise, it's very simple. It's saying that how Vidura returned after receiving instructions from Maitreya Rishi. And after receiving instructions, finally the instruction that he received placed him in loving devotional service of the Lord. And then after that he returned. And then when he came, then how Yudhishthira, and then the entire list is given of so many different personalities, how they were so pleased, in great delight, they saw Vidura, and then how they exchanged greetings, they offered obeisances, they embraced, in that way they exchanged greetings. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, when he saw Vidura, actually all these personalities saw Vidura, it was almost like life came back to them, because they were feeling so much separation, and it's almost like they got life back. And then Yudhishthira, he actually received Vidura in a very nice way, where he actually offered him nice food, fed him sumptuously, like what does it describe here? He fed him sumptuously and then offered sitting accommodation, reception. He gave sufficient rest and then comfortably seated. And after that, Yudhishthira starts speaking to Vidura. Right? So that is storyline. Okay. Now we will go a little bit into detail here, and we'll cover the purports. So I'll share my screen quickly because I want to point out this. So this is third canto, first chapter of the Bhagavata, where it actually gives the story of what happens. Why did actually Vidura leave, from the palace? So we know he was always there with Dhritarashtra, and he was always in the palace giving good advice to Dhritarashtra. What happened, right? So the third canto, chapter 1, talks about this, where it says, okay, here. So text 6 onwards is described that okay. So Dhritarashtra, he did not forbid his son Dushashan. Okay, sorry. Yes, okay, right here. So, okay. So basically here it is described that how Vidura is giving good counsel to Dhritarashtra, and here's Vidura here in text 11. You can see my screen, right? You must now return the legitimate share to Yudhishthir, who has no enemies and who has been forbearing through untold sufferings due to your offenses. And he's awaiting with his younger brothers, among whom is a revengeful Bhima, breathing heavily like a snake. Surely you're afraid of him. And then later on, you're maintaining offense personified, Duryodhan, as your infallible son, but he's envious of Lord Krishna, and because you're thus maintaining a non-devotee of Krishna, you're devoid of all auspicious qualities. Relieve yourself of this ill fortune as soon as possible and do good to the whole family. Right? And in that way, Vidura was giving good instructions to Dhritarashtra. And then Duryodhan, when he heard, how Vidura was saying that you're maintaining a non-devotee, you should get rid of him, right? Then Duryodhan starts speaking, and he says, who asked him to come here? This son of a kept mistress. He's so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his bread. And thus, pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to a core of that, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's plan. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. So before the battle of Kurukshetra, this episode happened. This is actually when Krishna came as a peace messenger, right? He actually gave good counsel to Dhritarashtra. He talked to Dhritarashtra and he told him, this war is going to cause the death of all your sons are going to be killed. And Yudhishthir is a glorious personality. He has Lord Krishna on his side. So for sure, give them back, or at least give them half of the kingdom back. Right? And then he gave all good counsel, but Dhritarashtra did not agree. Then Vidura gave good counsel to Dhritarashtra. Still, he did not agree. And then finally, we read that section where Vidura says, actually, you should get rid of Duryodhana. He is a non-devotee, and because of him, he'll be the cause of destruction of all your children. Right? So get rid of him. And when Duryodhana heard his words, then he actually insulted Vidura. Vidura was born of a Chudrani, right? We know the story of how Vyasadeva, right? He came, Vichita Virya, he died, in the battle, and then Vichita Virya passed away, and then basically Satyavati actually called Vyasadeva to actually impregnate Ambika and Ambalika, right? And then so when Vyasadeva came, because he was such a sage, and then I think Amba was the first one. Sure. And then she saw the sage, and then she closed her eyes, and Dhritarashtra was born blind. And then with the second, she said, okay, I'm not going to close my eyes, but just seeing how Vyasadeva was like a sage, and so, like with that, seeing Vyasadeva, she actually was just like, she could not, she didn't close her eyes, but her body started, shivering just.
Shivering.
Yeah. And then because of that, Pandu was born, who was not so, his health was not so good. And then third, they said, okay, once more. And then they actually asked a Shudrani to come, one of the servants, right? And then she, from her, Vidura was born. So Duryodhan, actually, he insulted Vidura saying, oh, you are born from the Shudrani, which is actually one way, when Vidura's mother was insulted in such a way, then Vidura said, okay, this is it. I had that enough. And then he left for pilgrimage. Now, in that pilgrimage, he traveled to so many different places. And then finally, he meets Uddhav. So third canto actually starts off with the description of Vidura meeting Uddhav, their conversation. And then Vidura wants to accept Uddhav as a spiritual master. But Uddhav says, no, you're senior to age than me. How can I be your spiritual master? Actually, Maitreya Rishi was right there when Uddhav and Krishna were having this conversation. So you accept Maitreya Rishi as your teacher. Right? And then Vidura accepts Maitreya Rishi. And that conversation between Vidura and Maitreya Rishi is the entire third canto and fourth canto. Both the third canto and fourth canto full is that conversation. And at the end of fourth canto, let me share my screen again, because this is basically referring to text 2 of what we just read. So here we see, okay, yeah. So the last chapter of Canto 4, we see after Narada instructs the Prachetas, then finally towards the end of this chapter, we see how, let me see here, right? Okay, so here we see, yeah. Okay, text 28. My dear king, in this way, after hearing the transcendental messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as devotees, from the great sage Maitreya, here, Vidura was overwhelmed with ecstasy. With tears in his eyes, he immediately fell down at the lotus feet of Maitreya Rishi, his guru, his spiritual master, and then he fixed the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his core, within the core of his heart, right? And then Vidura says, "Oh, great mystic, O greatest of all devotees, by your causeless mercy, I have been shown the path of liberation from this world of darkness. By following this path, a person liberated from the material world can return home back to God." Right? So he actually attained the highest perfectional path, right? And then Vidura, he's overwhelmed with ecstasy, he's shedding tears, he's falling at the feet of his spiritual master. And then after offering obeisances, then he took his permission and then he started for the city of Hastinapur to see his own things done, although he had no material. So end of 4th canto is pointing out how Vidura, after receiving the instructions, then he comes back to the palace of Hastinapur. Okay, so now let's go through the verses one by one. Okay, text number 1. Okay, so in text 1, basically it is described that how Vidura's Tirtha Yatra, he actually finished he was traveling on this Tirtha Yatra. Tirtha Yatra is a pilgrimage. And then he received knowledge of the destination of the self. So we saw in the end of 4th canto how Vidura said, I have received that knowledge by which one can actually cross over this material existence. Right? So he got the destination, knowledge of the destination of the self from Maitreya. He returned to Hastinapur and he became as well versed in the subject as he desired. So this point is elaborated in text number 2, where it says that after asking various questions and become established in transcendental loving service to Lord Krishna, then Vidura retired from asking questions. So finally, Vidura himself is actually Yamaraj. He's one of the 12 Mahajans, right? So he's a great devotee of Lord Shri Krishna. So finally, when he actually was received that knowledge from Maitreya Rishi about devotional service, which is the culmination of all the knowledge, then he actually stopped from asking further questions, and then he came back to actually give his mercy to Dhritarashtra. Right? So in the purport, Prabhupada actually talks about Vidura's how he's actually Yamaraj, but he was cursed by Manduka Muni to become a Shudra. So the story is that once some thieves were actually, they had stolen something and they were running away from the soldiers of the king, and then they came and they hid in this ashram of Manduka Muni, right? So when the soldiers came, they captured all the thieves, but along with the thieves, they captured Manduka Muni also. And then they took all of them to the king, and then the king actually, and they were all subjected to punishment. And the punishment was actually they were to be pierced by a lance, pierced by a lance. So, and all these people were, even Manduka Muni was in that, when all those were caught. And later on, the king realized, oh, this is Manduka Muni. And then he begged forgiveness. But Manduka Muni had to go through all that suffering, being caught by the soldiers of the king and then being subjected to this punishment of being pierced by a lance. And then he actually went to Yamaraj and he asked, why I'm supposed to go through all this? And Yamaraj said, well, when you're a small child, you actually took a tip of a kusha grass and then you actually pierced either it says an ant or it says a grasshopper, one of these bugs. He pierced that, and because of that, he actually has his punishment, or he's actually captured. And when Manduka Muni heard that, and with a tip of a kusha grass. So he pierced that in his childhood out of innocence, and now he's subjected. And when Manduka Muni, when he heard this from Yamaraj, he said, Yamaraj, for this small act of this innocent child, you are giving me such a big punishment? Actually, you do not know how to give, establish dharma properly. This is not right. I curse you to be born as a Shudra. Right? And hence Yamaraj actually became a Shudra and he was born as Vidura. Now, one way we say, we see in Bhagavatam again and again, like great personalities, like even Mahajans, we see that they are making mistakes. So one may say, like, if you see these Mahajans making mistake, how will you actually have faith in the Mahajans? Our entire process is Mahajano Yena Gata Sapanta. One should follow in the footsteps of Mahajans. But we see, like here, the first verse of this chapter is saying that how Vidura made a mistake in his childhood. I mean, how Vidura, Yamaraj made a mistake and then he's cursed to become Vidura. Right? So how can we put faith in this Mahajans? So the point is actually that Prabhupada explains in one of the purpose later on in this chapter, that it is actually Yamaraj, he's so busy giving punishment to people, and Prabhupada makes a point that there are more sinful people than nice people. So Yamaraj is working even more than all the demigods. He is like always he has to do overtime, because so many people are sinful, so they have to give punishment again and again and again. But what is Yamaraj really desire? He's one of the Mahajans. What he really wants to do is he wants to preach the message of Krishna. So because Yamaraj has a desire to preach the message of Krishna, Krishna said, okay, I'll give you a vacation. Go and preach the message of Krishna. And then hence he came as Vidura. So like how sometimes we may say, okay, I'm taking a vacation. I just want to go and study Bhagavatam. So Vidura also had this, Yamaraj also had this desire. Oh, enough of all this, like punishing people. I want to go and give Krishna's message. Right? And then hence he appeared as Vidura. So we see that Mahajans, though it may appear that they are making mistake, it is all the arrangement of the Lord for a higher purpose. Similarly, how Parikshit Maharaj, he garlanded Shamit Rishi. He's a pure devotee. Why would he do such a thing? We are reading so many glorious qualities of Parikshit Maharaj. But all that is actually arrangement of the Lord for a higher purpose. Okay. So that's the text one. And then text two basically is described after asking various questions, he became established in transcendental loving service to the Lord. So, so Prabhupada in the purport, he actually makes the point that he was convinced about the summum bonum of life. What is the summum bonum of life? What is the essence of everything in life? Is to come to the platform of devotion service. So when Vidura received this message from instructions from Maitreya Muni, and he was, shedding tears in love, in that bhakti, in that devotion of Krishna, then he actually stopped asking, and then he said, okay, now is the time I should give my mercy to Dhritarashtra. Right? Okay, so and further in text 2, Prabhupada actually he quotes 15.15 Bhagavad Gita, which is a verse. You can quickly say.
Vedeshta sarvar aham vedya.
Yeah, Vedesya sarvar aham eva vedya vedanta krit veda vidya vachana. The essence of all the Vedas is to understand Krishna. And after Vidura understood that, one way there is no end to this conversation. Right? The more you hear about bhakti and you want to hear more and more and more. But when Vidura actually heard this, then he was saying, okay, this is a time I need to go and deliver Dhritarashtra. And I was thinking of this point that when we actually get the knowledge of devotion, as we are progressing in our devotional service, what that does is it actually makes our heart compassionate. We become compassionate. It's a natural symptom of devotion to actually become compassionate. And Vidura was actually thinking, okay, I have received this knowledge, but he had always had affection for Dhritarashtra. He said that person is still, right there in material life. I should give him this knowledge. So the more we get the knowledge of bhakti, the more we want to share the knowledge of bhakti. And that's a symptom of as we progress in bhakti, we want to give bhakti to others. Okay. Prabhupada also in the purport, he actually makes a point that one must approach a bona fide spiritual master, like how Vidura is showing by his own example. He is approaching Maitreya Rishi, and what is he doing? He's actually asking questions. So the quality of a disciple is that he should have inquisitive, inquiries into spiritual life. He should be jigyasu. Tasmad gurum praprateta jigyasu shreya uttama. One should be jigyasu. And what is the quality of a spiritual master? A spiritual master should be, as Sri Prabhupada says in the purport, the spiritual master is one who should actually engage the disciple in transcendental loving service to the Lord. That is a true spiritual master. So that verse actually says, Tasmad gurum prapateta. One must approach a guru. Jigyasu shreya uttama, out of his inquisitiveness for shreya. What is the ultimate good for everyone? Shabde parecha nishtadam brahmani upashramachaya. It basically says, what is the qualities of a guru? He should actually be nishnatam. He should be perfectly knowledge in the topic of the absolute truth, and he should be fixed in detachment from material affairs. Okay. Now, now in text 3 and 4 is basically a list of people who are actually there in the battle. Tam bandhum agatam drishtva. So 3 and 4 is basically just the list. You know, Prabhupada is actually in the translation. He's actually making a statement from the next verse, you know, to get the flow. Otherwise, just giving a list would not complete that translation. So in that is just a list of like Maharaj Yudhishthir, his younger brothers, Dhritarashtra, Satyaki, all these people, when they heard that, oh, Vidura has come, they all hurried in great delight, and it appeared as if they had regained their consciousness after a long period. So we see that how everyone has this affection for Vidura. Okay? So Prabhupada in the purport, he actually, like, you know, it's almost like he goes to Mahabharata. First he talks about Gandhari, right? Yeah, first he talks about Gandhari. He gives like a whole history about Gandhari, and then how she's the ideal chaste lady who actually covered her eyes because her husband is blind. And then he talks further about Pritha, Queen Kunti, how she's an incarnation of the success potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kunti Devi is an incarnation of success potency of the Lord. The Prabhupada makes that point. And then he talks about the entire story of Kunti Maharani. You can just read that. And then he talks about Draupadi. Draupadi has the most chaste daughter, and she is partly an incarnation of goddess Sachi, the wife of Indra. And then he talks about Subhadra. Subhadra was also there, and and how Arjun, he kidnaps Subhadra, and so on. So Chakravarti Pad in his purport, he actually makes a point that when the life air goes, a person faints, and when the life air returns, a person regains consciousness, and all his activities, hands and legs, they become functional. So similarly, when Vidura was not there, one way they were actually in this, you know, faint state, or like, you know, when Vidura came, immediately their consciousness, their life air returned to their body. Okay. Now in text 5, it says, after, you know, seeing Vidura, they became very joyful with great delight. They all approached him as if life had come back to the body. So pranam tanvaha, you know, pranam means life had come back to the body. And then they exchanged obeisances and they embraced each other. And then text 6 further it says, and due to those anxieties and long separation, because after Vidura, they were seeing after a very long time. Actually, one place I heard that after the battle of Kurukshetra, you know, after Yudhishthira started ruling, Dhritarashtra was staying in their palace for 35 years. Imagine. 35 years he was actually in the palace of Yudhishthira. And then now Vidura has come. So it was a long time of separation from Vidura, and finally, so due to anxieties and long separation, they all cried out of affection. Right? And then when Yudhishthira saw Vidura after a long time, he's actually, you know, welcoming him, offering accommodations and reception and so on. Now, interesting point in purport 7, Prabhupada makes a point that Vidura was fed sumptuously, he took sufficient rest, and then Yudhishthira began to speak. Right? And when he was speaking, all who were present there listened. So that conversation between Yudhishthira and Vidura, everyone was listening. Prabhupada in the purport, he actually says how Yudhishthira Maharaj was expert in recession, and he actually makes a point that the Vedic system is, okay, this is a question, this will come in your exam. This is what are the 4 aspects of a Vedic perception? We read this earlier.
Give a seat, give some water,
Okay.
offer sweet words.
Yeah.
Asan?
Yeah, that's a seat. No, we said that.
Yes, seat. Yeah. Asan. Sweet. Water. Sweet.
Wash the feet.
How can I serve you?
Okay, all answers are very good, but I'll leave it up to you because this is one of the questions that will come in as a part of your exam. What is the fourth one? You all can search. Okay, with 3 of them you got right. Okay, so Prabhupada says that the Vedic reception is that is a proper way to receive a beloved friend or even an enemy. So even an enemy should be received in such a way that when he is being served, that he does not even realize he's an enemy. You know, anyone can think of any examples in Mahabharata where we see this kind of reception?
Jarasan?
Jarasan, yeah, when actually Bhim, Arjun and Krishna, they actually go, they dress as Brahmanas and then they go there. But Jarasan actually, first, they actually said, okay, at midnight we are going to ask, and Jarasan was very charitable. So, and they asked basically that we want to fight you. And then Jarasan says, Bhim. And then he makes a point that, I know you're not Brahmanas, just looking at you, I know you're Kshatriya. So even after realizing that it's Krishna and all, after everyday fight of Bhim and Jarasan, at the night, Jarasan used to be very hospitable to them. Serve them nicely. They are guests at my house, so let me serve you. Right? So in that way. So even an enemy is served. That is Vedic culture in such a nice way that the enemy forgets that he's an enemy. What's another example?
Arjun also went to Duryodhana, right?
Yeah.
5 arrows.
Between the battle of Kurukshetra, like when Bhishma Pitama made those 5 arrows, then Arjun, Krishna told Arjun, you should go and take those 5 arrows. Duryodhana said, I will keep them because then I'll give you tomorrow. So, so when Arjun went to Duryodhana, that reception is so described in Mahabharata. It's described so nicely that Duryodhana welcomed Arjun so nicely, and he said, like, now you're my guest. So now if you ask me for the entire kingdom, I'll give you my entire kingdom. That is the mood of guest. And said, now whatever you want, ask me. And Arjun said, I just want those 5 arrows. And then he gave those 5 arrows. So right. So the point is Prabhupada saying that even an enemy is served in such a nice way. Okay. Now we are coming to text number 8. So now Yudhishthira is speaking to Vidura. Okay. So let's go ahead. Text 8. Oh, is there any question? Mantri?
Yes, Prabhu, I'm asking about, you said Vidur is incarnation of Yamaraj. So I'm thinking Yudhishthir, I thought Yudhishthir Maharaj is incarnation of Yamaraj. Isn't it?
So Yamaraj is actually, he was cursed and he came in the form of Vidura. Okay. Yudhishthir Maharaj is actually incarnation of, actually here, Prabhupada, like in the purport, we see here it says, Prabhupada mentions this point.
He's called Dharmaraj.
Dharmaraj, yeah.
Is he son of Yamaraj? Like, when Kunti prayed, we pray for Yamaraj.
Yeah, Dharmaraj. Right. So it says actually Dharmaraj, son of Dharmaraj. That's why Yudhishthira Maharaj is known as Dharmasutaha. Right? Previously also we read this, that Yudhishthira is known as Dharmasutaha, the son of Dharmaraj. So, so Yamaraj, the incarnation of Yamaraj is actually Vidura, right? But the son of Dharmaraj is actually said to be Yudhishthira. There's a Gopinath Prabhu, you have any? Yeah, go ahead. Prathamati.
Prabhuji, I heard in one of the lectures, like because the Mundaka Muni was very angry, so he punished Dharmaraj, and then he said he has to take the 3 birds. One is Vidura as a son of Shudra, then one is Kshatriya. So he was like Yudhishthira Maharaj, and third was that he will be like a Chandala. So there was one sage, his name was Valmiki, but not the Ramayana one, but the other one, and he took birth as a Valmiki also.
Okay. I've not heard the story. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. So one way we can say Yudhishthira as the son of Dharmaraj, right? That's why Dharmasutaha. And then the Mataji's other point that that there's also an incarnation of Yamaraj. Where is the story from, Mataji?
Prabhuji's story comes like when there was a Rajasuya Yagya, what the Ashwamedh Yagya and all happened. So after that, there was a Krishna told them to invite everyone and feed them sumptuously. So then everybody was invited, and the Panchajanya Shankh was there. And then it was a thing that the Panchajanya, it used to make a sound, it used to blow after the whole Yagya was done, and everybody was very happy. But after this, it was not blowing. So there was a question. So Krishna asked them that, have you invited everyone? He said, yes. So he said, but there is one person who is not invited, who is a completely satisfied devotee. So then they searched for that. Then Krishna only told them there is one person, his name is Valmiki, and he is because a Chandala, but he is born in a family of a Chandala, but he is a very saintly person. He's a great devotee of Lord, and he stays in the Tulsi Vrindavan, that place, and he with the cow dung, he bathed himself like that, and he's a very pure soul, and he stays at one place. You can go and invite him. So then Arjuna went personally and invited him. So he came there, and then but he was not ready to come. He said, I don't want to come because I'm from this family and I don't want to spoil your yagya. But then they said, like, Lord Krishna want you to come and they stay there. So then they invited, he came there, and then it was Krishna requested all the Kunti Maharani, Draupadi, Subhadra, and all the other queens to make a very nice prasad for him. So then they said, okay. And then the person he came, the Valmiki Muni, and he came and the prasad was given. They were about to give him. He said, give everything in one like a pot and give everything together. So they all had this thought like, oh, why this person is like, and maybe he's born in a Chandala family, so he has that kind of consciousness. So they said, especially Draupadi, she felt we have paid so much energy to cook all this feast, and he is taking it in such a way that everything is mixed, because he's concerned that afterwards when we eat the food, it will be all together mixed only. So no need to give it separately and relish it. So then others, the Draupadi, she offended, and the Shankh was still not blowing after that. So then Krishna said, like, maybe somebody is offensive here and that not giving the attention on this sage. So then Draupadi accepted, yes, I was a little offensive. Then Krishna said, he is a really great person, and he glorified that person, his mentality, because he's really a very pure soul. So then Draupadi asked for the forgiveness, and then the sage, he said, like, because now he became very glorified and everyone will come to know about him. So he left his body at that place and he said, I don't want to get the glory and all. And he went back to God. That was a story I heard is one of the lecture, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Mantri Mataji.
Sorry, how it is related to Maharaj Yudhishthir? We were discussing that how Maharaj Yudhishthir is an incarnation of Yama.
So Mataji, I find the story is Yamaraj, when he's cursed, he's actually coming in three forms. One is the form of Vidura, one is the form as the son of Yamaraj as Yudhishthir, and the third is the one sage by name Valmiki. Okay, so let's continue. Text number 8.
Prabhuji, they all are coming at the same time in three forms. Vidura is there, Dharmaraj is there,
Yeah,
and
all are coming in the same form.
okay, thank you.
Okay, text 8. Who's next?
1 minute. Hare Krishna. Yudhishthira api smaradhano yushmat pakshachad chaya samedhitam vibhadganat vishagneyad mochitayat samatkrutaha.
Okay, fine. Translation.
Yudhishthira said, "My uncle, do you remember how you always protected us, along with our mother, from all sorts of calamities? Your partiality, like the wings of a bird, saved us from poisoning and arson."
And so Yudhishthira Maharaj is speaking to Vidura, and then he's saying, Api smarata, do you remember? Smaran karna, right? Smaran, we say like smarana, like remember. Do you remember? And then he actually says, Vipada. Vipada means all those difficulties, all those calamities. And like Visha. Visha means poison. Agni Deha means that fire, right? And Mochita, you actually saved us from all these Vipada. How? What is the example given? Paksha Shaya, right? Just like the wings of a bird actually protects the egg, similarly, you have always protected us, just like the wings of a bird actually protects its children. So that's how Yudhishthira Maharaj is greeting Vidura. And Prabhupada in the purport, he actually speaks how Vidura is actually more or less partial to the Pandavas. And Prabhupada said, actually, he's not so, because just like we say, like Krishna himself is not partial, right? So for the devotees, he has that natural inclination because the devotees see no one except Krishna as their Lord. But even for the non-devotees, he actually gives them his mercy by chastising them, right? So similarly, Vidura, because he's a pure devotee, he is actually partial in the sense to the Pandavas that he always protected them, and he also was favorable to Duryodhan. How? By always chastising him, right? And similarly, he was showing his mercy to Dhritarashtra by always criticizing all his policies. So that way, Vidura was actually thinking of the well wishes for everyone, that way. But still, in that way, because the devotees, Pandavas are pure devotees of the Lord, so Vidura was more or less partial to them. So he always protected them. Prabhupada in the purport talks about this entire story of Varnavata, that how there was this lack of fire, house of lack, right? House of lack. And it was set, and then Duryodhana and Shakuni, they had this entire plan to burn the Pandavas. And Vidura, before the Pandavas left, he actually told Yudhishthira, and Prabhupada says that he indirectly hinted, a weapon not made of steel or any other material element can be more than sharp to kill an enemy. And he knows this is never. And he who knows this is never killed. And then he says, but the soul can never be burned by fire. So through indirect hints, Vidura already told Yudhishthira Maharaj that there is going to be fire in the house. So, and also it is said that later on, when the fire was going to be set, then Vidura himself came, this guy, and he told them that tonight there'll be fire. So you actually escaped through that. So Vidura, he helped the Pandavas repeatedly again and again. And now Maharaj is saying that, he's expressing his gratitude and saying like, you always protected us, just like a bird's wings protects the egg. Okay. Text 9.
कया वर्तितं वश चरदभीषितिमण्डलं तीर्थानि क्षेत्रमुख्यानि सेवितानि ह भूतले. While traveling on the surface of the earth, how did you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service?
So imagine Vidura was traveling for so many years, right? So many years. And then now Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking, so while you're traveling, how did you maintain your livelihood? So Prabhupada in the purport actually points out that in holy places, there is something known as chatras. Chatras are free kitchen houses, Especially go to holy places, food is not a problem. You'll find many temples where they give free food. They're called chatras. So he was asking that Vidura, when you actually travel to these holy places, did you actually take food at these chatras? And then he asked, at which holy places and pilgrim sites did you render service? So even the question is so interesting. He did not say, where all did you go? He said, which holy places you rendered service. So we go to a holy places. What is our intention? To actually do seva. We do seva to the holy dham itself. I think the holy dham is manifestation of Balram. We do seva to the dham vasis because they are special. We do seva to the Vaishnavas residing in the dham by hearing from them. And then we finally serve Krishna because dham is a dham because Krishna personally resides there. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking that which holy places do you actually render service? Okay, Prabhupada in the purport talks about how Vidura, how he left and how he was insulted with Duryodhana. We already discussed that part. So we'll move on to text 10. So it's famous verse, text 10, and this is a verse to memorize. So let's, okay, maybe I can read. And you all with mute, please repeat. Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibhu
Swayam Vibhu
Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani
Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani
Svantastena Gadabrita
Svantasthena Gadabrita
Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas
Bhavadvita Bhagavata
Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho
Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho
Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani
Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani
Svantastena Gadabrita.
Svantasthena Gadabrita.
Okay, so that was one memorable. Okay, let's read the translation. Who's next?
Hare Krishna. My Lord, devotees like your good self are verily holy places personified. Because you carry the personality of Godhead within your heart, you turn all places into places of pilgrimage.
Such a beautiful verse actually. It says, Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas. Right? Bhavad means your good self, Vida Bhagavata. Devotees like your good self. Tirtha, Tirtha. So this Tirtha is used 3 times in this verse. Right? Tirtha, Tirthi, Tirthani. Right? 3 times that word Tirtha there. And actually, if you see Tirtha, the Sanskrit word Tirtha, certainly it means a holy place. But Tirtha also means like a gateway or a bridge, from the material to the spiritual. The Tirtha means like a bridge between the material and the spiritual. So what all kinds of Tirthas we have? Certainly we have Tirtha like, Vrindavan, Mayapur, these 2 are our most important, Jagannath Puri, right? All these are Tirthas, right? Tirtha, holy places. So these are manifestations of the spiritual world in the material planet. And when they are manifested, they are still spiritual world. So when there's a destruction of this material universe, these holy places are not destroyed because they are the Dham himself. Right? So Balram himself is manifested here. So one is the holy places, that is first Tirtha. The second Tirtha is the Dhams which are actually manifested by the pure devotees. So the pure devotees, like we perfectly for us, the example of Srila Prabhupada, when he traveled all around the world, he actually established dhams at different places. Why? He established Radha Krishna deities, he established Gaur Nitai deities, and then he called them New Mayapur, right? New Jagannath Puri, New Panihati Dham, right? So all these, so this is the manifestation of the Tirtha by the pure devotee. That is the second Tirtha. The third Tirtha is the devotees themselves are Tirthas because they are actually a gateway between the material and the spiritual. Right? The devotees themselves, because they carry Krishna in the heart. So this verse is saying, Swantastena Gadabrita. Gadabrita referring to Krishna. Swantastena. Stena means situated. Swa-anta, in the heart. Because Krishna is seated in the heart of these devotees themselves are places of pilgrimage. Such a beautiful verse. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is actually saying, oh, which holy places did you do seva? Oh, actually, you yourself are actually a holy place. Wherever you travel, that place becomes a holy place. Right? So, you turn all places into places of pilgrimage. So Prabhupada in the purport, he actually talks about, Prabhupada in the purport, he actually talks about how the Lord is actually omnipresent everywhere. And just he says that just like electricity in a wire. It is always, wherever the wire is going, electricity is flowing. But then when there is a bulb, then you can see the electricity is manifested there. So similarly, the Lord is present everywhere, but by the mercy of the pure devotee, the Lord is manifest at certain places, and that place is a tirtha. Right? The example of electricity is very nice. Okay, and then Prabhupada says the holy places all over the earth are meant for purifying the polluted consciousness of the human being by an atmosphere surcharged with the presence of Lord's unalloyed devotees. Right? Such a beautiful sentence. So holy places are meant for purifying our polluted consciousness. And why these holy places will purify our polluted consciousness? Because the atmosphere in these holy places is surcharged with the presence of the Lord's devotees. So it is the presence of the Lord's devotees in these holy places that makes the holy places so powerful that to purify our consciousness. That's why it says that when we go to the holy places, Prabhupada says in the purport, we should do 4 things. When you go to a dham, 4 things needs to be done. First, when you go to a dham, we search out for the devotees of the pure devotees of the Lord. First is search for the pure devotees. Second is hear from them, take lessons from them. Right? We need to hear from this pure devotee. Third, Prabhupada says, then once you receive the instructions, then you apply them in the heart. Right? Not just like 1 year and second year. You take the instructions and you apply them in your heart. And then the fourth one, you gradually prepare yourself for entering into the Vrindavan. Like into finally entering, prepare your consciousness of entering into Goloka Vrindavan. Like, so while you're in the Dham, you're preparing your consciousness to actually enter the Dham. So when you go to the Dham, these 4 things needs to be done. So Prabhupada just in one sentence, he lists out all these 4 things. Right? And then we know, like, the famous verses that Naham tishtami vaikunte yoginam hrideshuva tatra tishtami narada yatra gayanti madbhakta. So Krishna himself is saying, I am not in Naham tishtami vaikunte. I do not reside in Vaikuntha. Yoginam hrideshuva, nor in the hearts of devotees. Tatra tishtami narada yatra gayanti madbhakta. Wherever my devotees are chanting my holy name, that's where I reside. Right? So in the holy places where the devotees are chanting, they're glorifying Krishna, then Krishna is personally present there. So that is one verse. And then the other verse, which is very nice, is actually this is also a verse that Prabhupada often quotes. Yes, Yasyatma buddhi kunapetri dhatute swadhi kalatrajishu bhomi ijjati yatar tirtha buddhi shalilena kariche janeshu abhigeshu sa eva kokara. This 10:84:13. Basically in this verse it says that one who actually considers the holy place, who goes to the holy place just to take bath in the holy rivers there and not to hear from the devotees of the Lord, he is no better than a gokara. Gokara means an ass or a cow. So basically it says that you go to the holy dham, it's not just for taking bath in the holy places. The whole purpose is to hear from the pure devotees.
Prabhuji, what verse is that you said you quoted?
10:84:13. And another beautiful verse here is 9:463. Aham bhakta paradino hi asvantatra hi tuja sadhubir grasta hridayo bhakter bhakta jana priya. It actually comes with the conversation of Vishnu and Durvasa Muni, where Vishnu actually says that I sit only within the heart of my devotee. That's what I said. I only sit in the heart of my devotees.
Was there one more verse that you quoted before that?
Naham tistant, which verse? It is very nice.
No, it's not the Bhagavatam. There's one of the Puranas that Prabhupada quotes in from the purports of Bhagavatam.
Yeah, Prabhuji, can you send us? It looks like nice to learn.
It's just search on Vedaves, you can find a purport where you find this verse. No. Yeah. So purport of 4:21:41, you'll find it. 4:21.
So Prabhuji, 4:30:35.
Yeah. So this is a frequently quoted verse. Okay. So
Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
so this verse basically it is saying that Yudhishthira is saying Vidura that wherever you go, that place actually becomes a holy place. It's a very important verse for us also, that we should understand that our whole purpose of going to the Dham is actually to associate with devotees. And wherever we have the opportunity to hear from us, the devotees, that is actually already a Dham. That is a holy Tirtha. The devotees themselves are Tirthas, they are gateways from the material into the spiritual, and we should make use of this association. Okay. So on that note, we'll stop here. We'll have to, I was planning to cover till text 38 because like 60 verses in this chapter. But let's see next time we'll have to do it. Okay. Okay. So we'll have to stop here. Time is always there. Okay. So maybe we'll stop here. Anyone can share any quick realizations? Grantha Bhagavatam, Pijay Srila Prabhupada, Pijay Panchakalpatarubhasya Prakasam. So please continue your reading. So you can read chapter 13 and you can at least read half of the chapter. So read up to text 30 at least this week. Your reading is up to text number 30. Okay. So any points from today's discussion you would like to share?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
I like where Prabhupada says parents should give a strong impression of Krishna at a very young age, and how the playful devotees became his Archa Vigraha when he grew up. That was very.
what was the last thing you said, Matthew? Oh, the playful deities. Yeah, yeah. His parents gave him the deities, and then those same deities.
How it's very important to cultivate devotion at a very young age.
Yes, very, very important. Thank you.
Krishna Prabhu, it looks like this class was for me. Today's last section, especially.
So you're going to the holy Tirtha.
So,
well, even New Goloka Dham is a holy Tirtha, manifesting from the heart of His Honorable Krishna Goswami Maharaj.
it's a special kunja created by him, the service of Radha Krishna. Yeah, so at least bless me that I can go with the proper consciousness. And hopefully next Srimad Bhagavatam will be in Gadadhar Bhavan, where Gadadhar Pandit used to read Srimad Bhagavatam.
Oh, wow. Fortunate.
Think about all of us, Mataji.
Okay. Any other points from today's discussion?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I really like 2 points, Prabhuji. I like that constant chanting of Hari is success and makes us fearlessness. Always. And another point is like once the impression of that transcendental form is fixed in our heart, then we never forget it.
Yes. Yeah. So we always need to keep praying. Just once give us that taste of the Holy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
I like this point of, symptom of progression of bhakti is, sharing the message, to eagerness to share the message of the God, just like Vidura did when he got the instructions from Maitreya.
We say that beautifully in praise of Prahlad Maharaj. So, thank you. Next, Vijayamati.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I like how you said that this material world is the best use of bad bargain. And the ultimate goal of life is bhakti into Govinda.
Thank you. Venkat Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanvat Pranam. Prabhuji, like the main ambition of serving Krishna is to reform the rebellious nature.
The purpose of this entire material world is reformation of our rebellious attitude. All right. Thank you.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yeah. I like this point, how Bhagavatam gives us the chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit.
Yes. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dhanvat Pranam. Yeah, in Parikshit Maharaj, how he examine everywhere. He's looking for Lord Shri Krishna when he saw in his woman's mother, but he's looking out. So his mind always observing, like, where is Krishna? Who is, why? How can I find him? So mind always
Constantly
chanting
contemplating.
and searching.
Yes, yes. That's a sign of a pure devotee. Right?
Yes.
I mentioned this last time also. Hey Radhe Braja Devi Kecha. All the Goswamis are always in that mood. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna?
Where is he?
That's the mood we need to cultivate.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
I like the point that when Vidura heard from Maitreya, then his heart got softened from hearing the spiritual knowledge, and he got compassion and wanted to help Dhritarashtra. That was a nice, that our knowledge should make our heart soft and not like make us hard-hearted.
Thank you. Nice one.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Mata.
I was paying a lot of attention to Vidura's stories, background of the incarnation of Yamaraj and all that. But I also like the point that how Yudhishthira was inquiring him and how he served the dhams. It was very interesting. You know, Vidura is, you know, very spiritual personality, but then how he served the dham was the question, like how much we should take that when we visit the dhams, not just go like a tourist, but we need to do that. Keep this in mind and serve, like you said, in the 4 ways.
Yes. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you for joining from India. And, we are praying for your father. Mata.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. So thank you all so much. So we'll stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Vanchakalpatarubhasya Kripa Sindhuvaya Patina Pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo. Okay, so the exams will be Wednesday and Saturday. We'll be pleased to come. So please select one of the times. And Wednesday we could do. Anyway, I'll post on the group 7 to 8 or 8 to 9, whatever works. Oh, actually, for me, we have our Unity programs. Anyway, I'll have to reschedule. Maybe we'll see Thursday or Saturday, because now we have our Wednesday. Okay. Okay, so I'll find if Saturday works for most of them, then we'll just keep Saturday. But if that does not work, then I'll plan either Thursday or one other evening.
Prabhuji, this week university program is on Thursday.
Oh yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll do Wednesday. Okay, yes, this week is Thursday. Okay, so Wednesday and Saturday. Yeah. Okay, anything else? And please again continue posting questions. It was very nice to see all the questions. So yeah, please, that was very nice. Like I was feeling so enlivened just to see all the questions and thinking of the answers. So please continue posting questions on the group. Okay. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Matan.